Hello, everybody. My name is Apostate Aladdin. First of all, I'd like to congratulate everyone here on the 10K subs that I have on the channel right now. Thank you, everyone, for subscribing. I really appreciate it. Um, yeah, exactly. Congrats to 10,000 subscribers. Um, I have big plans for the channel, including I'm contemplating an introduction for the live streams. Do you have any ideas for that? Anything you'd like me to include in the introduction? Some kind of introduction sequence so that instead of people waiting on the waiting screen, it could be a minute or two of that while people populate the live stream. So I understand that it is a different time than usual. I'm trying to be inclusive of other time zones than the ones that I usually cater to. So it might be a bit slow to begin in terms of viewership, but that's okay. And I'll also be cutting out segments from live streams if you don't want to sit through the whole thing. Hopefully, I'll have some segments posted eventually. So, the purpose of today's live stream is to have ex-Muslims call in and share their stories. You could talk about anything you'd like. And in terms of duration, we'll try to keep it to 15 to 20 minutes per person, hopefully, so that I can, have as many people as possible. And as of right now, we've got 3 people in queue. The link to join is pinned in the live chat. Please, when you join, give me a brief introduction of who you are and what you want to talk about. So, without further ado, let's start with an ex-Muslim Satanist. I'm adding them in 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going?
Aladdin, how's the day been?
Good. How's yours?
It's been cool. So, first things first, I just want to thank you for being such a great representative of ex-Muslims and for giving us a platform to share our stories with whoever's open to hearing them.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So, I'm originally from Lebanon, where I was brought up into Catholicism for 15 years.
Okay.
After moving to the UK and meeting people outside of my little Christian bubble, I began having serious doubts about how my religion could possibly be the only true one out of all the others I was just being exposed to. And But Ehrman's work pretty much sealed my fate as a baby-eating apostate from the church. At that point, my Muslim friends caught on to the fact that I just left Christianity behind, and they were quick to put on their preaching socks and tell me all about Islam. And my very first source of info was the biggest Muslim advocate for pride himself, Ali Dawah. I took the bait, hook, line, and sinker, and I just ended up converting. After a lot of pushy encouragement from my friends, of course. And yeah, 3, 4 months after the fact, I left Islam and had the honor of officially securing my place in 2 different hells.
So it
That's
took you
pretty,
3 or 4 months of being a Muslim, I suppose, is what you're
yeah,
saying?
yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Well, what was it that attracted you to Islam since you first figured out that your religion doesn't make sense?
I think it was the theological consistency of it. Like, there's Tawheed. That's something that we don't have in Catholicism, and I thought it was much more philosophically sound than the Trinity and the different models of the Trinity. So I thought, if I cannot trust my very base of my faith in Catholicism, I might as well look into something else, you know? And yeah, just looking into the Islamic tradition and how it can be traced back to the very first person who started recording it. Also, I just saw that as a much better alternative than the hearsay of the New Testament.
Was it the um, preservation angle, I guess, that it's not as scattered as the New Testament?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And so you mentioned Ali Dawah was one of your first sources of information.
Sadly, yes.
Um, w- what was it? Did you see any red flags in his behavior or his the way that he conveyed information, or were you just focused on the information itself?
Honestly, at the time, I didn't quite notice any of these things because I was still very new to the whole Islamic scene. And I thought, if I go in like defensively and start picking apart everything he's saying and he's doing and his demeanor and stuff, I would probably be a bigot. Like I had that whole fear of being an Islamophobe just for, judging the way they talk, the whole Dawa men, uh, the whole drill with how they treat others, how they talk to people on the streets, the whole shouting matches and shit like that. And yeah, I just brushed it off at the start, just to focus on the information itself.
Because you didn't want to come off as bigoted or Islamophobic.
Yeah, pretty much.
Interesting. I know I'm very curious to know about your current beliefs as well.
Mm.
But I want to make sure that I've asked all the questions on my mind about your conversion stories. So, what was it that made you eventually question Islam?
So honestly, it was like just looking into the life of Muhammad, looking into how the rosy version of it that Dawa boys try to peddle didn't quite live up to what Islam really is on the ground.
Mm.
And when I started looking into the more technical things like Muhammad's false prophecies, the Chinese whispers game that is the Islamic tradition, the Quran's shameless retelling of made up myths as fact, and the list just goes on and on.
What? How did you come across this information when you started doubting? Like, what came first? Was it the doubts or that information?
I think it was the doubts because when I was looking for advice on some tricky questions like who created Allah and why an all-capable God would give us guys wiener hoodies if he didn't like them that much. Whenever I asked these questions, I was always met with very aggressive responses, and I thought, that doesn't sound like that can help me much, in terms of the Dawa guys, my friends. So I thought, what, let me look into it myself. And yeah, after that, I just came across Apostate Prophet. I've looked into his refutations of the whole Farid Response series, and yeah, I was just down the rabbit hole from there.
Fair enough. So yeah, tell us about your current beliefs. What does it mean to be a Satanist?
So, Satanism is an organized religion which is actually atheistic. It's very recent, like it was founded in the 1960s, and our cosmology is very secular. Like we see the universe as being indifferent to us, and that all morals and values are subjective human constructions. They're ever changing. There's no such thing as objective moral standards or whatever. And our position is to be self centered, with ourselves being the most important people in our subjective world. So we are sometimes said to worship ourselves. And yeah, we just view Satan as a symbol of pride, liberty, individualism, and he just serves as an external metaphorical projection of our highest personal potential. We don't believe that he exists literally, like Iblis or Lucifer or whatever.
Well, you said that people say that you worship yourselves, which is
Mhm.
that's the Islamic narrative about anyone who doesn't believe in Islam, basically, or another
Pretty much.
religion.
Yeah.
Um, I kind of disagree with that assessment about myself, but I want you to elaborate on that. Do you think that you worship yourself, and what does that mean to you?
So when I say worship, I define the word worship as reverence and adoration towards like a deity or a religious figure. And I think there's no harm in directing that reverence and adoration towards myself, especially after this whole acting like a slave to Allah, this whole subservience that we experienced in Islam. I thought I might as well do that. Like it would be a good coping mechanism to kind of deconstruct this whole narrative that I'm inferior and that my voice doesn't matter, that my thoughts need to be suppressed. And I just found solace in that, to be honest.
So, what do you think of the line of questioning that says, um, "You're arrogant"? Well, it's kind of not even just questioning; it's
Yeah,
accusation. You're arrogant because you choose to worship yourself rather than the idea of a superior God. What do you think of that?
I would say most Satanists who come to the position that I came to have come from very religious backgrounds. And we have really tried our hardest to make the idea of God make sense somehow. And after examining all the evidence, or the so called evidence that the religious people present to us, I've come to the conclusion that there is no God, at least not the ideas of God that they present to us, and that we should only have ourselves as, that center of our own subjective universe instead of something that may not exist.
And you mentioned, by the way, someone is asking, let me find that comment again. Um, is your profile picture supposed to be Dajjal?
Yeah, it was because, in Muslim TikTok, there's this thing that they're doing where they leak apostates' pictures and they put the kafir on their foreheads and things like that. So I thought, you know what, I might as well do it for them so that I can save them some time. And I just stayed with it. I kept it.
That is, I didn't know that was going on at the moment. So they kind of dox people, like they put their photo with kafir on it.
Yeah, pretty much. They just look up the usernames that we have and see if there's any other accounts outside of TikTok that will come up when they look us up. And they will take these pictures and just do this childish bullshit.
Um, well, you say it's childish bullshit. I think it's more dangerous than that. Um, and I do agree with this assessment. If I can find the comment again, it is extremely toxic. TikTok, especially, I've realized that Muslims act way worse on TikTok. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
um, I cannot imagine, and I hope nobody watching here would ever do something like that to a believer or anybody. Um, be-
absolutely.
it's extremely dangerous, especially when you have a very motivated crowd, and it's horrible what they justify for the greater good. That that they have no concern for someone's safety like that. But yeah, everybody,
Yeah.
please make sure you have your usernames anonymous. Don't use your actual name or something with your photo somewhere else. Um, okay, and another question that I had. By the
Mhm.
way, feel free to stop me if there's anything else that you want to comment on.
Oh, there's no need to. Go ahead.
Um, You mentioned that you don't believe in objective morality, and that
Mhm.
you think, or as a Satanist, you think that it's subjective. So, how do you find your standard for morality?
I think we mainly find it through, what's better for us humans. Almost all humans have this goal for striving towards well-being and reducing harm and suffering. And I feel like there's many different systems that are secular and they are backed by science rather than just dogma that can be questioned. And I think we can do just fine with them being moral constructs that we made up. We don't need a God to tell us what's right and what's wrong. I don't think that morality as a whole would exist if humans didn't exist. And yeah, I just feel like, we can base our morality on science, trial and error, and just secular reasoning, pretty much.
You said without humans, morality wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
Um, so, animals don't adhere to some moral code, is what you're saying?
I would say that their so-called moral code is more intuitive and like instinctual. But when we're talking about it wouldn't exist without humans, we're talking about moral systems. things that are written and set in stone, and everything that we agree to as human beings in terms of morals.
A couple of questions came up or comments came up from Soleil Apostate, and I want to hear your opinion on that.
For sure.
He was saying he doesn't like Satanists or Satanism, and he was saying worshiping the devil is just a useless provocation that will be used against us ex-Muslims. Muslims already believe that we follow Shaitan. Satanism is another sect, and
Mhm.
Satanists believe in blood sacrifice. I could not validate it. What do you
I would
think of that?
say, I would say that this is a very huge misconception that people have around what Satanism is. And before the 1960s, the term Satanist was used loosely. It wasn't really something concrete that was prescribed by anybody to refer to something in particular. It was just used by Christians to refer to anybody they didn't like. For example, in the Inquisitions, the Satanic Panic, all these different things. I don't believe in the devil, and no Satanist does. So blood sacrifices are kind of redundant if we don't have anybody to offer them to. Besides, to Satanists, we view animals and children and anyone who's like still innocent as very sacred, and we wouldn't go around killing them just for the sake of it. You know.
I see where Soleil is coming from. Like, here are my thoughts on Satanism. I listened to a podcast episode, Stuff You Should Know. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. I highly recommend that podcast. And they were talking about Satanism, and I learned a little bit of similar to what you said of how it started. Um, I don't think, unfortunately, in the Muslim world, I don't think they have enough patience or nuance or foresight to sit down and try to understand that it's not just a contrarian label, but what it actually means, or sorry, that it is a contrarian label, but it doesn't actually mean worshiping the devil and blood sacrifice and whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, so I see it in the Christian sphere. It's still provocative and also kind of brings attention to that mentality in a
Yeah.
good and bad way. But in the Muslim world, or in the Middle East at least, I kind of see it as the provocation and misunderstanding is bigger than the benefit that comes from, bringing attention to that label. So I think I
Yeah.
kind of agree with Soleil on that. Um, and that's not to grill you here on the live stream or anything, but
No, I understand that.
yeah, like it's like you said, we already get told that we are following the devil and whatnot. So to say, yeah, we are following the devil, but it's not what you think, um, I think is misleading. But at the same time, I see the benefit of this kind of selective provocation in terms of sometimes it gets people's attention.
Mhm.
Um, but even provocation, I wouldn't say is the right word, because I feel like you're not really infringing on someone's right by saying, "Hey, I'm a Satanist.
Yeah.
You hate the devil. I don't worship him, but I'm a Satanist." It's not really provocation, but it will be taken that way. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah, I've,
understand
I've
that.
got conflicting thoughts on it, but just wanted to share that.
Honestly, this is exactly why we say that Satanism is not like a religion for the masses. It's more of a disposition. And if you happen to naturally agree with what the term entails and, the whole hedonistic existentialist philosophy that it carries with it, then I think it's worth looking into. But yeah, in terms of provocation and things like that, I think this type of thing is needed in the Muslim world. Like, it probably doesn't make sense, but Christians have almost been desensitized to Satanists and atheistic Satanists and whatever. And I think it's time for the Muslim world to cope with the fact that we exist, that we have the right to choose a religion that is not God driven, that we have the right to identify with deeply held beliefs that they might not like. And yeah, it's basically just an act of rebellion against the status quo.
I agree with most of that, except that you're right that the Muslim world needs to catch up to the Christian world.
Yeah,
But I think we're trying to force too much progress in a very short span of time. And some techniques are maybe more effective than others. And this one, and I'm speaking from experience, most Muslims are not even gonna give it a second thought. It's just gonna be cemented in their mind. Oh yeah, blood sacrifice. Oh,
yeah.
Satan, we were right all along, and they will not even give it a listen. What do you think of that opinion?
Honestly, I kind of agree. Like when I'm engaging in debates with Muslims and I'm talking to them about uh, theology or just atheism in general, I don't even tell them I'm a Satanist. Like
Right.
this is something that I identify with in my own private life. But when I'm engaging with people who have many negative connotations of what Satan is, I would be like, you know what, let me just call myself a secular humanist because that's the closest thing to us, or just an atheist, and we can leave it at that. So yeah,
So
I absolutely agree.
when does that label benefit you in your private life, or what is the point of using it?
So Satan to us is a very important figure, and you know humans are hardwired to embrace these figures and revere them in a way. Like we are pretty much hardwired biologically to be religious, to love different types of rituals, like weddings, for example. These are rituals, you know.
Hmm.
And when I do what I do in my private life, I do my own rituals. Um, I have a figure that I look up to, and I just have like a set of rules and doctrines to live by. It pretty much fills the gap that theistic religion has left behind for me, you know, and there's no type of God baggage with it. There's no uh, objective moral standards that I need to adhere to. There's no preaching, uh, proselytization. There's none of that. So I just thought it's pretty useful in utilitarian terms, if that makes sense.
Well, you say that you look up to a figure, and in this case, I
Mhm.
guess it would be Satan, or
Yes.
revere Satan. What is it that you revere about him?
Well, since I come from a very Catholic background, and you know they believe in the fall of Lucifer and his rebellion against God, uh, you know how he offered Adam and Eve the opportunity to eat from the tree of knowledge. All of these things, I see them as the ancient precursors to secularism. It's like Satan was this force that went against tyrannical authority. He was the one that encouraged people to open their eyes and not just follow a god blindly. And all of these traits, like that he represented, even in the Bible, you'll see that he didn't do much wrong in the Bible other than trying to reason with Jesus in the New Testament. And then, yeah,
Well,
like,
there are many versions of Satan aside from what is actually described in religions, but the
yeah.
folklore and the connotations about Satan. Why do you choose to associate with that or be perceived as revering that side of it as well?
Well, honestly, it's just something that I don't really have much control over because, you know, like I said, it's a disposition and you're either born like with this type of mentality, this contrarian mentality, or you're just not. And I
Well,
feel,
it's not
yeah,
about the contrarian part, but I mean the like the evil that is tied to Satan. Not just that he disobeyed God, but supposedly Satan is why or part of why we sin or we have
yeah.
these bad thoughts. Whether that is true or not, that is the association with Satan.
Mhm.
So why do you choose to have that association tainting the rest of your, at least from an outsider's point of view, tainting the rest of your position?
Honestly, I can totally see why it seems that way, but I feel like it's a very good way to spark conversation on these types of issues. Like when you come up to someone and they ask you, "Are you actually a Satanist?" or something like that, it pretty much sparks conversation that we would not otherwise have. For example, on secularism, on freedom of speech, freedom of blasphemy, all of these things, especially when I'm dealing with Christians and I'm talking to them, debating them, these things would not happen if I just associated as an atheist or a secular humanist. So there's other values that are tied to that label as well.
So you think if you didn't have that label, you wouldn't be having, or the discussions that you have because of that label, the times that theists do ask you, what does that
Mhm.
mean? Um, those outweigh the times when they prejudge you and don't even have the conversation.
Pretty much, because I do not like to associate with people who judge a book by its cover. And most of the people in my life that are good people are those that look beyond the surface. So it's also a pretty good way of separating the sheep from goats, so to say.
I kind of disagree with that. So I'm with you on the point that it's people who don't judge a book by its cover that's a good quality, and we would want to associate with those people more. But
Yeah.
when it comes to changing minds or even just conveying your point of view to the other side, so to speak,
Mhm.
um, you eventually have to engage with what some would consider sheep, right? Or like to borrow your terminology, or
Yeah.
someone who is not open minded and will judge a book by its cover. I'm not saying we must cater all of our conversation to them and make sure that they're happy and satisfied, but
That's
sometimes it helps because at the end of the day, it is a population. They're still taking up space and still, contributing to the world just as we are.
yeah.
Um, so that is my stance on that. Sometimes people can be very wrong and very stubborn and very closed minded. And I don't cater, my conversation to them. But
Mhm.
if it can be slightly more receptive, if they can be slightly more receptive to it, it could be beneficial.
Yeah, and that's
But yeah,
pretty valid.
yeah.
Like when I started off, I was like, um, let me take off my earrings, anything that would trigger, the whole religious side of these people when I try to debate them or talk to them. And yeah, like when you're trying to reach out to them and have a decent conversation with them, I agree that it is not helpful to have that label tied to you at the same time. But to me, it's more of a like personal philosophy that I follow, and it just happens to be called Satanism. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Um, yeah, is there anything else that you wanted to share with us?
Yeah, there's just this point that we touched upon a little bit about the whole backlash and the danger that comes with leaving the religion, and how the TikTok Dawah men are doing this whole leaking thing. I just wanted to talk about the backlash I received in general, really quickly.
Okay.
So even during the very beginning phase of my doubt, um, I've had people mask condescending insults as beneficial advice whenever I asked them things that they could not answer. And when I left, the abuse that was heaped on me was insane. Like I've had people call me subhuman, insulting my parents. Some even went as far as trying to push my suicidal best friend to unalive herself just for associating with me. And besides all of these things, I've been called a Satanist. I've been called many things before I even looked into Satanism. So at that point, I just had kind of a like mental break from dealing with this bullshit for months, and encouraged by other external factors that I can't quite mention on air, I decided to go down like the Armin Navabi route and respond to all of this abuse with mockery and blasphemy, which didn't go down quite well, as you can imagine.
Hmm.
I was doxxed by my former friends, had my home address, face, and real name leaked on a bunch of dark websites. And you could say that I have had the privilege of experiencing the Kafir premium package that comes with leaving the religion of peace.
Well,
And
I'm sorry to hear about all that. That is horrible.
that's all right. I mean, at the end of the day, um, all of these experiences, got me to where I am right now. Especially like the whole blasphemy thing. I saw how liberating it is to blaspheme against the faith that I once held so sacred. And when I found out that I can do that and call it my religion, I thought, they've pretty much like got me into something that I'm thankful for in terms of my personal life and general philosophy. So yeah.
And absolutely see where that contrarian stance comes from, and who am I to tell you that it's not a good one to take? So I understand.
Yeah, I'm glad you can see that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all that with us. And how do you feel after talking about this?
Honestly, I feel great. Like this is the first time I actually open up about these things, especially the whole backlash part of it. Like I talk about my reasons to believe quite a lot, but this time I want to focus on, the human day-to-day life things that happen when you leave.
Hmm.
And yeah, it feels great. It's been great talking to you, and I
Yeah,
really appreciate you having me on
likewise.
your platform, my friend.
Of course. Thanks so much for calling today.
No worries. Have a great day.
Thanks. You as well. Bye.
Bye bye.
All right. I'm going to get to some comments and then I'll get to the next caller. We've got 3 callers in queue. Um, I found this funny. Metalhead is saying Satanism is listening to black metal music 24/7. Yeah, that's the TLDR of the past 20 minutes. Soleil was saying if you link Satanism to atheism, Muslims will never leave Islam. To leave Islam, you must think that you're going towards good, not evil. Like I said, I do associate or I do agree with that angle that and here's a counter angle. MKWKE21 says there are theists willing to murder us, and we're debating whether being edgy is okay or not. Why are we offended on behalf of theists? Who cares if it's a useful tactic? Let him be himself. Um, so a couple of things I want to say about that. First of all, yeah, I hope it's clear. I am letting him be himself. I'm just curious to understand more. Um, and it's not that I'm trying to protect the feelings of theists. It's that it is important to know. It's kind of, I don't even want to phrase it as know your enemy because I don't see them as my enemy, but they see us as the enemy. So it's important to understand how they think. And we don't have to walk on eggshells around theists, but at the same time, we need to understand what's the best strategy for our own safety. And if you're someone who cares about advancing your position or communicating it to the other side, then it's important to consider all these things. You could be someone who's like, hey, they say F you, I say F you back. Or I take the position or label of a Satanist, even though, publicly, even though I know how it's going to make them feel and think about me. That's your prerogative. That's up to you, which is not exactly what the caller was saying, to be clear. Um, but overwhelmingly, I do agree with that sentiment from Soleil that when it comes to the public context, or even privately, I don't necessarily want to tie myself or my position to a symbol of evil, even if I think that symbol is misunderstood or if there's something admirable about the core of his position, Satan's position. I still think for me it is too tainted to open with that or to even have that as a label. But I do take a lot of the values that the Satanist that called in has. It's just that I don't have the label itself. So I hope all of that is clearer. Desi Neo, thank you very much for the super chat. He says, one of my favorite apostates, keep doing what you're doing. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, we've got a few callers, and then Soleil Apostate is in queue now. So we're going to start with Fleshy Mammal. I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. How's it going?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, this is great, man. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. A bit nervous.
No.
Before I get started, I just want to say you're absolutely wonderful, man. You're genuinely one of the best. I guess ex-Muslim voices out there. Just your attitude, the way you can keep things calm. You can poke at people with really provoking questions, but sound very wholesome while doing it. You're just great, man.
Thank you very much.
So yeah, thank you for all that. I grew up in Jordan, a country in the Middle East, to a very very closed bubble of a family. We all sort of grew up in a compound. Everybody was right next to each other. It was pretty dysfunctional. But I remember the first question I ever got about Islam in general, and I was pretty young. I was I think like 4th or 5th grade, and what happened was my in school they had given us a hold on, I need to breathe a bit. Yeah, I have, you know what it is. Okay, so basically we had a religious class, and right after it was a science class. And in the religion class they had told us about how you've got 2 angels with a stick that cause lightning. And then the science class right after it was about charges and how lightning is actually formed. And that was the first question I ever had. I was like, but you guys just told us that it was a big man with stick. And the teacher was like, yes, but he causes the charges to happen. And every question I ever asked after that, I was shut down. And I was taught to keep quiet. And I only began really questioning everything a couple of years later, around the age of 14. And this all started because I wasn't very religious for most of my life, although my family was. But I would always isolate myself away from the family for other reasons. It was pretty abusive household, and so around I entered a religious phase only around like from I guess 13 to 15, and I was very religious. I'd have friends over and we would be like playing games or whatever, and they would call for prayer. Then I'd be like, "Get up, we must go pray," and I was that guy until my mother. Now my mother is a Muslim convert. She grew up in a Latin American country, and then she married a Muslim guy, and then she moved to Jordan. She has a lot of like depressive disorders and stuff like this. So she went through this little crazy episode where like she beat the living shit out of my sister, and then she trashed the house, and then she left for 3 days. And I was 14 at the time, and I'm like, man, I'm a pretty sad kid. Could that be me? Could I end up like that? And I locked myself in the room for that meantime, and I was like, you know what? Let me look up what is this depression thing. And this opened the doors for me learning about psychology, and then I saw that like there's spiritual topics about it, religion talks about it, there's philosophy about how to deal with your depression and stuff like this. And this opened this like door of all this knowledge that I had started consuming in my own time. And this really cut down on my religiosity. Also, I like to draw a lot, and this was a question that always lingered because the drawing is a sin in Islam. And I would always be told like you're not allowed to draw living things. One day I asked, and they gave me the reasoning, which was you're challenging God. You're trying to create. How dare you? And I thought, man, that's the dumbest shit I've ever. Who in the right mind thinks that graphite on paper can challenge the thing that created everything? And that question always lingered, and it snowballed into all the other sort of questions of how is this thing getting offended by anything? It shouldn't be. And so, but eventually I just buried these thoughts, and I continued with learning about all the different like topics of philosophy, religions, and science. And one day I decided to, let me take a step back. I'm noticed that I'm getting into all these other topics, but how do they align with my religious beliefs? And it turns out they don't align at all, but they made more sense. So I ended up making up my own sort of Islam, where I'd perceive it in this like very progressive type of way of viewing the world and changing up meanings to fit a more wholesome Islam and whatnot. And even when I'd have conversations with people, I'd give that and some people would agree and whatnot. And so I thought I was like onto something, but I was still afraid. Islam really ends up casting fear, and you can't take a shit without being afraid. Am I shitting right? Do I leave with my left foot, right foot, whatnot? My family was very nitpicky about this stuff. I'd get yelled at if I accidentally have a shoe upside down. I don't know if you've ever experienced that.
Well, not to that severity, but yeah, shoe upside down is bad. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's facing Allah. How dare you? Um, so yeah, there was a bit of that. And then around the age of 18, I had left to the States. I finally got to move out. I am skimming through like a lot of key events here, so feel free to ask questions or stopping me at any time.
You have questions about stuff that you said earlier, but I didn't want to interrupt you.
I'll go ahead.
Well, first of all, it's very funny the lightning learning about
Yeah.
the religion class and then science class right afterwards.
Mhm.
You said you kind of you faced some opposition when you asked these questions. Can you tell me what that sounded like?
Yeah. If I'd like watch a video online about maybe aliens or just something scientific, I'd just go to mention it to my family, and they'd be like, "Is that mentioned in the Quran?" And I'm like, "I don't fucking know." It's like, "Okay, go check. If it's not, then don't look at this stuff." And that happened over and over again. If I ever asked a question that had God in it, so if it was like something, for example, of why does God care if I listen to music during Ramadan? They'd be like, "Don't ask this type of question. What the fuck is wrong with you?" And so I would immediately get shut down, or like, don't think those kind of thoughts. That's just Satan fiddling in your brain. You can't do that. So I'd have a lot of that. So eventually, again, I just shut down and retreated into my own space until again I was around 18 when I decided maybe something I don't feel right with my beliefs. I have a lot of contradicting thoughts. This Islam thing is, I have questions, and then I started to try to re-engage with my family members, and they'd snap at me and whatnot. So I
Well, by the way, how old are you now, approximately, if you don't want to share specifics?
I'm 20.
Okay.
Yeah. So I took to the internet again, and then I discovered ex-Muslims were a thing. I was like, what the fuck is this? There's other people who have gone through this experience and not gone out of it. Is there another side? And the first video I ever watched was the famous Ex-Muslims of North America video where people are getting interviewed in the streets and whatnot. I watched that one, and then from there I discovered many channels, and the most impactful ones were what's Hassan Radwan, and I don't know if you know a channel that goes by the name of Theremin Trees.
I absolutely love both of them.
Yes, yeah. And they were the first two that really opened my eyes, and I felt heard for once. And I was like, yeah, I agree with this. I guess I am no longer a Muslim. And this was a tough period because I had moved, I had lost a lot of friends, I had gotten out of like a really rough relationship and whatnot, and I was pretty angry because thinking of all the fear I had throughout my life, all the shit that I missed out on, and all the ways I inconvenienced myself because of this religion, and but I couldn't share with anyone because none of my family members are not religious in any shape or form. And so I went I became like isolating myself again, and then my mom noticed. I was staying with her at the time, and then she came to me with this problem of her cousin. She took off her hijab, and she was telling me how her husband was reacting, and I was siding heavily with my cousin, and then she's like, "Oh, I never looked at it that way." And then before she leaves the room, she comes back. She's like, "Do you still believe in God?" I'm like, "What?" It's like, "I don't know. You're talking weird." And I couldn't hold it. I really hate lying. I'm a terrible liar. So I was like, yeah, no, I don't. I don't believe in God. And she's like, what? What happened? And I'm like, I can talk about it if you're willing to listen. The only reason I came out is because I live in the States now, and I felt a lot safer. And I had had a bit of independence by that time. And so yeah, we had a big conversation about it, and she actually listened. She was very open to it, and I only think that is because she was Catholic and then she became Muslim. And I think to change religions, you do need a bit of like, and she had converted at a very old age, like I think 28 or something.
So she has some kind of familiarity with, leaving your first beliefs behind, I guess.
Yeah. And then turns out she had a lot of the questions that I had, but when she was living in Jordan, she wasn't allowed to ask them. She was always shamed for them, and she had suffered a lot of abuse for being a foreigner from the family. And she was seen as my father's trophy wife and yada yada, this and that.
Mhm.
But thankfully, they divorced when like I was 9, which is probably the best thing that happened to me. Or else my dad would have turned my brain into mush if I stayed, if I lived with that guy. And yeah, so then I could finally get close to my mom, and she like got to know me. I lost my train of thought.
Well, I want to ask you about something, and feel
Yeah.
free not to answer this if you're not comfortable. First of all, I'm very sorry about your family situation. It sounds horrible to go through that. And I know that this is a train of thought that often comes to apologists' minds and everyday Muslims too. They would say, well, the reason you left Islam or the reason that you didn't like Islam or had questions is because, as you put it, you had a dysfunctional family.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
The dysfunction, I usually tell them it was never related to Islam. A lot of it was not like related to Islam. Some of it was, but most of it wasn't. And my reasoning for leaving Islam did not come from this dysfunction. I never connected that dysfunction to me like changing my faith and whatnot. And sure, they may use like, oh, it's because you started looking into the other stuff because of depression and whatnot. And I'm like, maybe, but when I think about it, I really can't connect the dysfunction directly to me losing my faith, because at one point the dysfunction made me more religious.
Mhm.
And it was only in like in hindsight, after leaving Islam, did the dysfunction make sense, as a lot of it did come from Islam. And then I started, when I'd talk about it and vent about it and whatnot, I'd connect it then. So maybe that's a mistake on my end. And
No, I wouldn't call that a mistake.
maybe just I see it because they read they apologists immediately will point to it.
Mhm.
And that's when I try to steer the conversation into a more, I guess, philosophical and morals and stuff like that.
I think it's unfortunate that they weaponize such a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have some thoughts about what you just said, but I want you to feel free to continue. You were saying you were talking about how your parents separated and how your father's reaction would have been to your apostasy.
Yeah. No, I don't think he would have done anything to me. He's a very he was never there. Even when him and my mom were married, he was never really around. He has 2 wives, or had 2 wives, not one. The red pilled guy he is, but he's a type of father who would like blend in with the couch and only appear when shit hits the fan, if somebody's screaming or whatever. And he'd always enable like my mom's behavior, or I guess my stepmom. So and that's pretty much all his existence was. If I ever spoke to him, it felt like I was talking to a wall, or like an AI that just gives always the same fucking answer. I did like visit Jordan recently, and I saw him again after like years. He's also in and out of prison because of financial bullshit that he's gotten himself into. Him and all my uncles. And I thought maybe this is not. I'm older. I'm more matured. Maybe I can get to know him a little. And like I was telling him about my endeavors and how I'm trying to pursue a career in art and whatnot. And he's like, "Yes, son, but you know what? Prayer is more important than drawing." And I'm like, "Oh, you fucked it. You fucked it." And yeah, and I steered away again because he wants a son in his image. He doesn't like what I am. and I have a half brother, but he, like, I guess, fumbled the bag in life, and I don't blame him. I blame my dad and my stepmom for like treating him like shit and always calling him a loser and whatnot. For they compare him to other, I guess, successful people in the family, and they completely like destroyed his spirit. I got lucky by holding on to art throughout all these years. I had other passions that were destroyed, but I somehow held on to this one. But I want to go back to when I opened up to my mother. After I opened up to her and I started getting closer to her, I thought, okay, like this being honest here has gave me a great opportunity to get close to my mother, and I don't have to really fake anything around her anymore. And it was going great. And then so I told my other three sisters, since they were also living in the States, and they had like taken off their hijab and whatnot to quote unquote adapt better to the States.
Mhm.
So they didn't take it well for like a month, but then they came around. I am their only brother, like directly from my mom, and they're not close with anyone from my I guess my stepmom. But like my family is weird. So my mom was married to my uncle when he passed away. Apparently, Islamically, she has to marry his brother, or she can, or something like that. And
I don't think she has to, but I guess she's allowed to.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then so she married my dad. Thus, I was conceived. So my like I have three sisters from my mom and her previous husband, and then other siblings from my I guess stepmom. And I'm the only one from my mom and my dad. So yeah, and like they had a rivalry. All my siblings from my dad's side and from my my mom. So they never got close, but I was close to both of them. But eventually, I moved away from all my half siblings because they were a lot more religious, a lot more close-minded. They had they're very like conspiratorial, very close-minded, very judgmental and whatnot. And they were it was sad to be around them. It was exhausting, and as much as I tried to help, I just couldn't. I managed to help my mom. She considers herself more of a deist now. My sisters are all still like religious. I mean, they grew up into it, so they're still holding on. But I got away from it. So yeah, so eventually I did get closer to my sisters and my mom, and now they know. But I like cannot tell my dad because I'm sure it would like destroy him. I don't know what it would do to his health. He would blame himself for me not being religious, and I just don't want to do that to him. I'm not. He's not a part of my life. He doesn't support me financially or anything like that. So why should
Well,
I?
I hope you realize the phrasing of that. You're not doing that to him, but I understand where you're coming from. That there's no benefit in telling him, and he's gonna be, he's gonna harm himself, in a sense. I just want you to know that that distinction, that you taking a position on Islam is not causing him harm. He is causing himself harm because of his beliefs and how he's gonna take it.
I understand that.
Yeah. But obviously, I'm not telling you just go tell him and who cares what happens.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's just again, I don't want to put that burden on like my other siblings as well.
Mhm.
For them to deal with it. And I know I'm phrasing it as if I'm at fault here, but if I can be like, it's still in a way my responsibility if I know what it would cause if I said this stuff. When I don't really, it's not really necessary. I'm not living with them. They don't really play a role in my life right now. If they ever do, if I'm ever stuck around them, maybe I'll have to find a way to function around them. But for now, no.
That's a prudent way of thinking about it. And
Yeah.
I'm glad you have a bit of a happy ending with your mom and your sisters.
Yeah, thankfully that's going well.
Mhm.
It's been nice. I'm very lucky with being able to open up to them and whatnot after like all the fucking awful years in Jordan. I had really bad experiences with in that place. because of the family dynamic we had and some religious stuff here and there. So yeah, like that's that. Let me see. Okay, I can't think of anything else.
You had mentioned, by the way, that drawing is a sin in Islam. To clarify, some people don't believe that, or many people don't believe that, but a lot of people do. And I've heard the same exact thing growing up, though I wasn't, not allowed to draw. But I had an Arabic book where I saw that it was like a Saudi government curriculum Arabic book, and I saw that every drawing of an animal had like a line through its neck. And I asked my mom, I said, why is there, like, I thought I thought the book was used and there's some problematic kid who just put a line on every animal's neck. I'm like, that kid needs help. But turns out it was just a fresh print. And she told me that it's because they believe if you draw the animal without, kind of putting a line through its neck, you're challenging God, you're creating something, like you said, which is pretty silly. And it does tie into, like, why does God get offended by anything, like a fart or anything else? Like, this is all matter. It shouldn't matter to him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Plus, it's his making.
Yeah.
No, I used to draw like monsters and shit like this and demons, so they thought I had a problem.
Fair enough. That's more like haram, I guess. And more alarming to a theist. Yeah.
In high school, my sister worked in the school I studied in, so she would get teachers going up there. It's like, is your brother okay? And she's like, what? He's like, I think he's schizophrenic. What? And she's like, 'cause look at his art. And once one of the teachers asked, he was an awful teacher. He was a full-on Nazi. He was very racist. And he asked her, "Am I gay?" That's why
because you're drawing monsters.
Yeah.
Fellas, is it gay to draw monsters? Oh my god. It is, to be clear, it is a bit concerning when a child is drawing a lot of this stuff, because it may be a sign of something else. So the concern itself is not, the worst thing, but the gay part is funny. Yeah.
I did move away from drawing that kind of things. I did draw them to cope for the most part, and now I draw women who have the mighty have fallen. But yeah, that's that for now. I'm trying to. I've been steering away from the I guess debate around Islam. I will hop on some of your streams every now and just to listen. I'd like to hear the conversations you have with, especially religious people. It is interesting. I'll hear them say some really ridiculous shit, and I don't know how you don't smile or anything. So props to you, man. I can't do that.
Who says I don't smile? I'm wearing a mask. No,
your eyes don't squint or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I've heard a lot of it before, and I don't want to, mock them for that kind of belief. So
fair enough. Yeah. And yeah, so I've been just stepping away from it all because it's been exhausting. And I'm just trying to focus on recovering from all the trauma and abuse I've gone through, since now I have the time and space away from everyone, and I'm just focused on my art and pursuing that. So yeah, that's that.
Well, thank you for sharing all that with us. I remember you said one more thing that I want to comment on. Maybe it wasn't you, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said something about, feeling bad about all the time that you spent as a believer, or missed opportunities and things like that.
Yeah.
I just want to remind you, you're very young, and even though you sound a lot more mature than you are, try not to, focus on that grief too much, because you still have a lot of opportunities ahead of you, and not much is, permanently lost, I hope. So, yeah, I hope you recover. Yeah.
I guess it's not the things I've lost. I have caused a lot of damage in the name of this religion. I being a only brother to 3 sisters, and how Islam treats women, and how it makes a guy perceive women as being a core part of my value and my status in a Arab world. Even when you speak Arabic, you know how people will cuss at each other in Arabic. It's never directly at the guy. It's always at his mom or his sisters. and so I even though I was younger than all of them, I was very aggressive towards them when it came to how they dressed and stuff like this. Um, I do try to apologize now when I do the most for them now, but there's still some guilt lingering there. And I even my first girlfriend, God bless her soul, I was such an asshole, man. I once got upset at her for putting on makeup. I cringe every time thinking about that.
Mm-hmm.
It was ridiculous. But yeah, it's stuff like this that I guess bothers me. Is I have caused some damage to
Mm-hmm.
people, and I even knew of a gay guy who I was very mean to. And I did eventually try to reach out to him. Poor guy, his family put him on house arrest when they found out he was gay, and they tried to do 2 exorcisms on him. But he managed to escape. He's in the States now. I don't know how he did it. But I tried to reach out to him. He didn't respond. Then I fully understand. But yeah, it's mainly that. It's just the damage I've caused, and the mean things I've said to people, and stuff like that that I dwell on from time to time. And I try to be as best of a person I can now. It is one of the biggest pulls to me that away from Islam was how bad it made me. And it's I don't know if you know this really this quote, which goes there's no hate like religious love, which I really like it. And yeah, it's I resonate with that. It's just that, and I managed to pull another family member out of Islam, one of my cousins, and it was by this line of questioning. I just asked him about some of the damage he's caused, and it's in the name of what did you hurt this person? And he'd respond, "Oh, it's Islam," and then that would plant the seed of, is this really good? Is this really what peace is? Is this, what we've taught to believe it is? And then slowly I tried to show him some of the things within the Quran that are questionable, and its history and religious history in general. And yeah.
Well, it's good that you, at this young age, you're realizing and feeling some guilt or remorse for things that you've said or done, and you've been trying to make amends. It sounds like, and maybe one way to make amends, even though there's no kind of karmic scale in the universe, is try to do good things to, aside from trying to fix the things that you think you're responsible for, do more and put out more goodness in the world.
Yeah, that's been my
Yeah.
approach. Mainly taking the things that messed me up and try to understand them more. So, for example, the whole red pill alpha male, manosphere type stuff that had I had bought into that. I'm very against it. I do try my best to help guys out of it and help see the world outside of that, Muslim or not. It's going mainstream now. It's ridiculous. So that's something I have a good understanding of, and how, especially in the Muslim world, how a man ends up getting resentful towards a woman when she might not have direct effect in his life. It's just mostly that if she's messing up, it goes on him. People will look at him as why is this woman in your life looking like that? That's on you. And so the guy eventually turns to her, is like, look at what you're causing me. And I there is a feminism movement in Jordan right now. Recently I visited, and there were billboards and stuff talking about domestic abuse awareness. So that was a huge step for that country, and I was happy to see that. And even helping the women in Jordan understand why these men end up thinking the way they do, to help navigate them a bit better. So that's, in a way, it makes me feel better to tackle issues that I've been a victim of, I guess, of this ideology. So that's one example of how I try to, I guess, undo some of the damage I've caused.
It sounds like you've already undone it, but it's good to continue down that route, and you have a lot of work cut out for you. So, keep it up, and thanks for contributing that way.
Yeah, thank you so much for this, man.
Of course, yeah.
Genuinely, you're really awesome.
Thank you, and I'm glad you were able to call us today.
Hell yeah. All right, man. See ya.
Have a good rest of your day.
So, yeah,
Bye.
bye.
Oh, I forgot to tell Fleshy Mammal, I guess he's gone then. I was going to tell him what Misha Hector was saying. Check out how victims of MLMs recover from recruiting other victims. The guilt is similar. Okay, I'll read a couple of comments, well, like 4 comments, I believe, and then I'll get to the next caller, which is Setsuna. So Saleh Apostate wanted to join, but he wasn't able to. He was saying, I just want to say that our strategy or tactics as ex-Muslim activists are important because our content can change the lives of thousands of people. I agree with that. Like I said, it doesn't necessarily mean catering to theists specifically, but it is good to be mindful of what is the best approach. And I know that sounds kind of almost contradictory to me making funny videos about Islam, but I think that is a line that needs to be crossed, and it depends on how it is being crossed. If you watch my videos, I'm not making a video being like, pig, prophet, all that stuff. I don't think there's any point of that. But I do make pointed jokes that actually are built on truths in Islam, or at least like stuff that has to do with canonical information in Sunni Islam. Anyway, getting to the next next comment. There are some people who've been saying, like Eddie, me saying, I have doubts, but I was told to hold on to the rope, still lost. And they were saying that they still pray and it gives them comfort. Do whatever gives you comfort, as long as you're not harming yourself or someone else. And I really hope that you eventually are not lost. And yeah, Misha, thank you for asking that question. Is there a better efficient way financially for you aside from YouTube? YouTube is the most predatory in terms of like taking a cut from whatever people donate. So I appreciate the donation still, but I believe PayPal is better, and then Patreon is close enough to PayPal if you want to do like a recurring thing. But anyhow, thanks for asking that. And last question. I do want to share some thoughts about that. Bittersweet Sting was saying it's stupid when some Muslims say that ex-Muslims leave Islam because of abuse and dysfunctional families / depression, when most converts convert to Islam because of depression and or religious spouse that they have. So that's a good point. Often people's trauma is kind of weaponized against them, in at least in Muslim rhetoric or da'wah rhetoric. The idea that, oh, this person only left Islam because they have a bad father, or because they've had a bad family life, or because they went through trauma. And sometimes they don't just point it out, they mock it. Like, I've seen people, for example, I've seen a lot of Muslims point to a gay person and be like, were you sexually assaulted by someone when you were younger? Not just that, but as an insult, not questioning, but more like you were, which is horrible. And if they were, how does that help your point in any way? So God predestined that they would be sexually assaulted and then turn out gay, and then you're piling up on that. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, there's a lot to be said about that. I think that, first of all, yes, the double standard. You see a lot of people joining Islam, or Muslims becoming more religious, and they cry because they went through so much trauma and like God saved them, or just the hope that God gave saved them, or they read a verse that resonated with them, and nobody mocks them for that. Nobody says, at least like most people don't say, look at you, you're so emotional, you only have emotional reasons for joining Islam. Just because you went through trauma doesn't mean that your religion is true, and all that stuff. Usually the rhetoric isn't like that, but from the other side, it's vicious. And more that I want to say about that, I think it's more likely for someone who has a dysfunctional family relationship, for example, to be more noticed as an apostate, because the ones who don't, that's nothing noteworthy. So believers don't comment on that much. But also, if the family is understanding and progressive and nice, then they might be more likely to accept the person as an apostate, possibly, right? But when they don't, that's when you see it becoming more of a problem in their life. Therefore, that's the statistical bias right there, or one of them. And what else? I can't read my own handwriting. Yeah, and sometimes, like the previous caller was saying, these dysfunctional events or things that happened cause you to think about what caused them. Sometimes religion is a big role in them. Sometimes religion seems to not help with these things or become a catalyst. And sometimes it just gets you thinking outside your box. If you're very comfortable in your life and you've got, no major issues, then you're less likely to question things in general. Why should you care about the ugly parts of your religion if you're going through, a peaceful life and your family's nice and nobody you really interrupts your flow? So these are a few reasons why it seems to theists sometimes that, or Muslims, that it's only the traumatized ones become ex-Muslim, which is not true. Anyway, getting to the next caller. I don't know why the queue keeps getting longer and then shorter, but we've got 3 now. So next is Setsuna. Setsuna, I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Is it windy on the microphone because there's
A
a
little bit,
fan
yeah.
blowing beside me right now?
It is windy, yeah.
It is windy. Okay, wait a
Yeah.
sec. Was that better?
It's still very windy.
Okay, wait a sec. Just wait a sec.
Sure.
Okay.
It
I
yeah.
I closed the fan already. Is it still
Okay.
windy?
I think it may be your breath as well that's in your
Oh
microphone.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's too close, I think.
Okay, this is better.
Okay. Okay. So um, basically about the point that you said before. You said the guy who was being born in the dysfunctional family are more likely to get out of Islam, that kind of stuff. um I kind of agree with that, but at the same time, uh you know how would I say, because you see, I grew up in a normal family. I was an ex-Muslim living in Malaysia, and as you know, I guess Malaysia version of Islam is more like whitewash. It's more like the good stuff. They take the good things, the good ayah, and then they throw out the rest, and that's what they always preach, like 80% of the time, kind of stuff. So, I grew up in a pretty normal family. They pretty much trust me. Even if I don't pray, they believe that I I do pray. That kind of stuff. As for my relationship with the religion itself, it's always kind of like on and off. You know, I sometimes I became religious for like 3 months straight, and then I live one salah, and then just one. I just live one, and then after that, like, I became not religious for like 3-4 months, and it's always like that kind of process, like on and off process, again and again and again. So yeah, I would say that I'm not really religious in the first place. So um what could so the reason why I became an ex-Muslim. Okay, so like first of all, uh basically I love watching YouTube, right? And one day I was trying to strong my faith, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And then so I was watching a lot of the Dawah guys video and that kind of stuff, and then stumble upon Abdullah Samir video by accident. So I watched that one, and then he makes sense. He makes way more sense than all of those other Dawah guys and Muslim apologists and stuff. So I watch one more of his video, and then one more, and then one more, and it's fun to watch his video, especially the one where he interview ex-Muslim from around the world, the 1 hour and a half kind of video. So yeah, I watch all of those things, and I compare it with the Dakwah guys video, and what I found is that he makes so much sense he makes way more sense than those guy ever did. And yeah, that get me into ex-Muslim Reddit, that get me into a group of ex-Muslim on Telegram and stuff. Uh, the um, the guy that he interviewed, Firos, and then so, and that got me out of.
Hello? Hey, you cut out for a second.
Oh yeah, where was I the last
You're
time you hear?
saying you got on a group on Telegram and then you watched him interview Pharaoh guy? Who?
Firos.
Fyros.
The
Okay.
the guy that was in Sweden that is right now fighting for the freedom of religion in Malaysia.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, that's how I.
Oh no. Uh, you're back again.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I basically that's how I get out of. I became ex-Muslim. It's literally by accident. That kind of stuff.
It's interesting when people say it happened by accident or even that they converted by accident because it makes me think that luck and just coincidence play a huge role in your beliefs in a sense, or like in your afterlife fate, like you just being unlucky enough to see the wrong video at the wrong time maybe made you an ex-Muslim. But do you think that eventually you would have had more questions or come across this or looked up this kind of stuff yourself?
Well, I mean, like, my 2 cents about it is that I do still think that God exists, but at the same time, I also think that if He exists and He is truly just, I think He will judge us based on how we live, not based on our religion, race, skin color, political ideology, individualism, not based on all of those things. Because, if He is the most just, that's how He should be, right?
Hmm. I agree with that. That's what I started to believe towards the end of my, journey as a Muslim. I was thinking, it doesn't make sense that God would follow these specific criteria. It seems a lot more inclusive and fair if he would assess the merit of the person instead. But even that has some issues in it. But yeah. So, how long did it take you from when you first came across Abdullah Samir's first video to realizing that you don't believe anymore?
Probably a month and a half, something like that.
A month and a half. Okay. And how did you feel when that happened?
Um, well, first I felt free, but now I've come to realization that maybe I won't be able to get married forever, because of the fact that my family believe in Islam and this country is literally being controlled by Islam, which is, you know, some sort, no less than a cult, you could say so.
I'm sorry to hear that. And you don't have any hope, or you don't see any opportunity to meet someone like-minded like yourself?
Maybe, most of ex-Muslim here in Malaysia, just like me, they, they secretive, they are, just, shut it up in the shadows, that kind of stuff. I mean, sure, if I, go to a bigger city than where I'm living now, because I'm living in a pretty rural place, it's so hard to find ex-Muslim here. I do post, if there's any ex-Muslim that live in the city that I live in, please contact me and that kind of stuff. And there's none. Literally, there's no response.
Hmm.
On Reddit, of course, because it's anonymous and stuff.
I hope there's eventually in the future resources for ex-Muslims to find each other and meet, but I know that can be dangerous. So everybody out there, please be careful if you're talking to someone online who's saying that they're ex-Muslim, because even if they are ex-Muslim, you got to be careful. But I do hope that you meet someone like-minded eventually. I'm sorry to hear about that.
No, I guess coming through that relation maybe ain't so bad either, because I could live a free life. I could travel the whole world and that kind of stuff. Sure, it's nice to travel the whole world with, a significant other, if that makes sense. But, um, you know, at the end of the day, the only thing that human need is food, water, and sex, right? So, you know, just because I cannot marry doesn't mean that I cannot have sex. So
Interesting. Okay. So is it more important for you? But you're saying it's not easy to find ex-Muslims. So you're saying with Muslims then?
nah, that will never happen because I don't think that will ever work. No,
Mm-hmm.
even because first of all, I don't want my parents to know about it till they hit the grave. So I cannot marry a non-Muslim. I cannot marry a Muslim. I could
Mm-hmm.
only marry an ex-Muslim who is a Malay, same race as me. Because in Malaysia, I think they kind of like got it confused. They always, you know, what could you say? If you are Malay, then you need to be Muslim. Because all Malay are born Muslim and that kind of stuff. So I think they kind of like have this confusion between race and religion. Because race is Malay is a race. It's the majority race in Malaysia, and religion is Islam. And if you are born Malay, you were always born Islam. That kind of mentality that they have, I think.
Mm-hmm. I don't think the only point of marriage is to have sex, but I guess from an Islamic background, it can be like because people want to have sex, but they can't before marriage, so they're rushing to get married. But I get what you mean about it doesn't have to be a bad thing. Like you're not constrained. You're more likely you can easily see the world easier than if you have a partner. Though it's not always a barrier, but it can be. So yeah, I hope that you find your way that way then.
Mm.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
where would you want to go? Like if you don't mind disclosing, what's the destination you'd want to visit?
What's his destination? I don't remember the name, but there's a cave system, which is probably one of the top 10. Still, it's the biggest cave system on Earth, and it still has kind of like 150 to learn some, underwater cave diving and stuff. When I'm already established, became financially stable and stuff, I plan to learn underwater cave diving and try to explore that place. I don't remember the name though, but it's in Vietnam, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't remember what it's called either, but I hope you get to go soon. Do you have any experience diving yet, or you want to learn that?
Not yet, because I don't have money to learn. I want to learn lots of things, but I don't have money to learn. Like for example, I
Mhm.
want to learn like a competitive dancing, tango, cha cha cha, the swing dance, that kind of stuff. I want to learn that. I want to learn high performance driving, how to drive a car like a racer. Basically, I
Mhm.
want to know. I want to learn sea navigation and all kinds of things, but just doesn't have money to do that yet. So once I, you know, get my plan start, my investment plan, and once I could, what could you say? I could live without having to work anymore when my investment work. I have a plan for investment, that kind of stuff, and I already, have it in mind. And if it does work out, I will be at a point where I don't need to work anymore in order to live. The investment will literally make me enough money every single month for me to live, that
Mhm.
without having to work anymore, basically.
Okay. Well, I really hope that works out for you, and I hope you get to do all the things that you want to do.
Yeah. I mean, there's also like when it comes to religion, like there's also like maybe we all praying to the same God, just like with different methods. You can also there's also like that kind of what could you say concept of it, if you may. We all praying to the same God, with just doing it differently. You know, when
I hear that
different
sentiment
religion just do it
from a
differently.
yeah, I hear that said by some religious and ex-religious people sometimes. Yeah. Yeah.
So like if we all praying to the same God, right, then what makes your religion the right one? That makes every religion the right one, right? If everyone is praying to the same God, just with different methods and stuff, different rituals.
Well, they don't think that everyone's praying to the same God. They think a lot of them think that a lot of theists think that everyone else is praying to the wrong idea of God. So, yeah.
Yeah, but if you think about it like that, it makes more sense, right? I mean, even like atheists, for example, do we? I mean, sometimes let's be honest, right? The world is cruel. You work hard, 8 hours per day, 6 days a week. 9 to 5 kind of job, but you don't feel like you get paid enough. Sometimes you do get paid enough depending on your boss and kind of stuff, but most of the time you doesn't, because that's the harsh truth of life. So sometimes even atheists, sometimes they do feel like praying to God and that kind of stuff, because of the hardship of life, you know
I think
or
it
sometimes
depends. Like some atheists or people who don't believe God exists, they wish that there was a higher power that would take care of the mess that's in this life or their own hardships. I don't know if that qualifies as a general statement that atheists wish they could pray to God. Um,
I mean, not
yeah.
wish. For
Mhm.
example, if one of your relatives, get into hospital, that kind of stuff, and they are in the moments of dying, sometimes we hope that God will save them. Everyone has that kind of sentiment, right? We hope God will save them, and I think hoping is like the same as praying. It's literally the same, right? In our heart we want them to survive longer and that kind of stuff you know so I
I
think
agree
that's
with the
the
sentiment, but not that I would hope that God would save them. Um, I
yeah,
would hope
but I think that
that that they would get better, but I think I know what you mean. Like you think that in desperation you would hope that there's a God that would save them. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, I mean, it qualifies as praying, if that makes sense.
I don't think it does,
But
because praying is like asking God for something and hoping He'll do it. Um, in that case, I'm not asking. I'm just hoping. Like, okay, what is the difference between hope and prayer? Is what you're saying here. That's a good point. I don't think they're the same thing though. Because in hope, you're not asking that some external force will do something to change the outcome, right? And that's what prayer is. But yeah, we can disagree on that. I'm just like explaining that I don't exactly see it that way.
okay, fair
Mm-hmm.
enough.
Mm-hmm. But it's if that brings you comfort in a sense, then think what you will about it in that situation. Mhm.
Also, I get this concept from a movie, from a movie I watched called Interview with Gods. Do you watch that movie?
No, I have not.
So it's basically, God in that movie kind of makes sense. So the movie is about a guy who have an interview with gods, but he doesn't know how he know the place where he's gonna meet the god. He doesn't realize it until that God say it to him. The god doesn't contact him through phone, through email. He just know where to go and interview him for 3 days straight. So uh the God in that movie kind of makes sense. So he said that whenever you feel sad, whenever you feel depressed or down or anything, just look towards, other people. I give you enough power to, you know, to, what could you say? I give you enough power to help yourself, to save the world, and that kind of stuff. So whenever you feel sad, whenever you feel, desperate, whenever you feel that the world is so fucked up and that kind of stuff, look towards other people, look toward other human being. I hear your prayer, but I already gave you enough power to save this world by yourself, you know,
So God is
that
like a
kind of stuff.
hands-off kind of God. Like he doesn't intervene.
Yeah, something like that. He doesn't
Mhm.
intervene because he already gave us enough power. Because when you think about, science, for example, back in the days, people believe in all kinds of stuff because they couldn't explain it. Science is not that advanced yet, but nowadays we understand things better because, science, medical technology, all of the things that we have today. Like, for example, like microwave or a car or something. Why do we have that? We have that because of science. And why do we have science? We have science because we ask question, that kind of stuff. We always that's why we have shower, we have cars, we have oven. That's why we have every single piece of technology that we have today is because we ask question.
Mhm. Oh, they disappeared. They're back.
So that's like the power that he already gave us, the ability to ask question, the ability to think and ask, how to solve this, how to solve that problem and that kind of stuff. So that concept kind of makes sense because of the fact that, he already gave us what we need, this mind, in order to solve all the problems that we have. We just need to use it more, that kind of stuff.
I hear what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so is that what you believe today, that God exists, but that is the version of God that exists?
I was kinda, I think, maybe
Mhm.
said 80%, something like that. Kinda, it kind of makes sense. That concept, if I think about it, it does make sense.
Okay. I see what you mean there. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us about, your beliefs or past beliefs or anything of the sort?
Mm. Well, like, well, actually, I don't really expect where the conversation is gonna be when I came in here because of the fact that I don't know that you're gonna do this call in. I just finished working out and then I saw you, doing live on YouTube. So, oh God, I kind of stumped now. I
That's
don't think I
okay.
have anything. I don't think I have anything left. Um, I'm sure there's a lot of things that I want to talk about, but I couldn't think of any. So, maybe you want to get to know the caller, give them a chance
That's
to
okay.
tell their
You can
story.
always try again another day, but you have shared a lot with us today, and I appreciate you calling. Yeah. I
Okay,
hope you enjoyed the
so
call as much as I and the audience, I hope, did.
thank you, I guess, and yeah, that's all for me.
Of course. Well, have a good rest of your day. Hello? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm still there. Do I need
Okay.
to press
No,
something? Or,
I'll press it for you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
okay.
Okay. So, next caller, I'm getting to the next caller. Somebody wanted to join again. Just to remind everybody, the banner on my channel shows the scheduled live stream times. I will try to do 2 a week. One, I forgot which day the first one is, but the second one is like today. So yeah, different times for different people, and I try to switch the topics and whatnot. So if you do want to join, keep an eye out. I will be announcing live streams, hopefully, several days in advance, but during those 2 time windows. And to answer this question before getting to the next caller, Sinful One says, I don't understand atheists. How could everything exist without a creator? Here's my stance on that. So atheist to me means the concept of God is a man-made concept. Every time I've seen God posed or explained, it's a man-made concept. I don't know if there's a higher power. I don't know how everything came to be, what accelerated or started the Big Bang, or how these mechanisms started to exist, or if they were always there. I don't know. It's bigger than I can conceive. However, all I care about is knowing the concept of the man-made concept of God is that that thing exists and it demands things from you, things such as so and so and so. And I don't see that being validated at all by these claims. These claims are always just claims, and often they contradict themselves and don't make sense to me. So I'm not scared that that thing exists and it wants something from me that I'm not understanding. It knows if it wants something from me, it can tell me. Other than that, I don't quite care. I'm curious to learn more about how the world began, if we ever do find more answers about that. But it's not an assertion, at least for me, that everything came from nothing. But the idea that there must be a creator and it wants things from us, that's the man-made concept. And the idea that everything that exists needs a creator is also a man-made concept, because, going back, well, who created God? And that's people argue that infinite regression, there has to be a thing that wasn't created. Then why is that thing not the universe? Like, why do we go back and stop at God? Why is it not that the universe existed and the universe had God in it already, or didn't have God at all? I don't know. There's a lot to be said there, but it's not like a lot of theists pose it, that I believe everything popped out of nowhere from nothing, and, that kind of stuff. Anyway, next caller is Persian King. I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. How's it going, Persian King?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. It's interesting that you had a Malaysian lady beforehand. I was gonna state that there was a Malaysian guy I knew at work, and well, I didn't know to what extremes Malaysians or Muslims, because I know, unlike I'm Iranian, so unlike me, you know, like my people, Islam wasn't forced upon them. So it was true trade that the Malaysians or those people in that region of Asia became Muslims. But then he said something really kind of like fanatic to me, and he didn't come off to me as somebody who was a fanatic. And mind you, this is a this is your average Muslim. And I told him, "Oh, hey, what's up?" Because I live in the U.S. And when I told him that, he kind of said that he kind of talked about his kid. He said that he doesn't like that. When somebody tells him what's up, and he had a broken English, and but I could understood. And I asked him why. He said that he would never allow his own children to say, "Hey, what's up?" to him. They have to say "Assalamu alaikum." They have to say that, like, mandatory. I'm like, is this dude serious right now? Like, holy crap! Like, and
Because
I'm
you
like,
come from like a possibly Middle Eastern or Muslim background, he
he's
expected you to.
Malaysian, so Malaysians are.
No, I mean you. Like, he expected you
Me?
to say "Assalamu alaikum" instead of "What's up."
Oh yeah. Well, the thing is, I wasn't a Muslim, and I told him that he knows I'm an ex-Muslim. He knew that. He knew that I was an ex-Muslim, so there was no need for me to tell him that. But yeah, I'm like, wow, man, even my people are not like that. I'm like, I didn't know Malaysians were that extreme when it came to Islam. And I knew they had conservative people. I didn't know to what extent they were extreme. I found out they were kind of more extreme than my people. But anyways, I
Extreme is
was
a
gonna,
spectrum. Like, it's hard to say. I
yeah,
know what you mean, that this is, one would expect that the everyday normal looking, if there's such a thing as normal, person would not have such a strong stance on how to say hello.
Yeah,
To some people, that's not even that extreme. So
yeah. This is
it's
the first
yeah.
time I heard somebody like I knew people like that existed, but to actually hear somebody say it, it's kind of like seeing a lion. When I see lion on TV, it's one thing. I remember when I saw a lion for the first time, I was like, "Holy crap! They're bigger than I thought." So to hear actually somebody say that to me, for real, I was kind of shocked. I didn't expect him to say something like that. But yeah, I mean, as far as like, let's say, I'm not sure if you have ever. I'm sure like you've like received like threats from like Muslims about leaving Islam. I don't know if you have received that or not, but this happened to me once only, and this was back in 2011 on YouTube. I used to be very political, and I was talking, and then this Arab Muslim guy. I don't know what kind of Muslim he was. I don't know if it was a Shia or a Sunni, and told me. So he said that uh, he would drive a sword into my body because I left Islam. Like he considered it a huge sin. He was one of those extremists, but I don't know if he was being a troll or he was serious. But something kind of told me he was being serious, and he was telling me, to give him my address, and like hell, I would. I'm not gonna give you my address where I live, and he basically said that leaving Islam, he compared that to basically being a traitor to a country, like, let's say if somebody gives out a secret of one country to another, he compared leaving Islam to that. I'm like, that's insane. When
I
you're,
hear that a lot. Yeah, it's like
yeah,
you're
I'm like,
either with us or against
religion,
us. How
yeah,
come like there are rules for hanging traitors in certain countries, or like executing traitors? Why aren't you protesting that? Which is such an asinine logic.
yeah,
But yeah, yeah.
yeah, you're like, that's a horrible comparison because America did, in fact, one time actually did hang traitors, the story how Soviet Union got their uh, uh, got their atomic bomb was two American spies, who worked for the federal government, the U.S. government, worked with the Soviet Union, and they traded secrets of uh, America's like it's happened in the 50s, where they traded America's secrets about nuclear weapons to the Soviets. That's how the Soviets got their information about building a nuclear bomb through these spies. So of course they had to be hanged. They betrayed the state. I mean, that's something that they're not supposed to be doing. Like
Well, what
compare
I
that.
find odd about the comparison is that if we're saying that leaving Islam and talking about it is like revealing,
Mm,
government secrets or like
yeah,
state secrets, that
yeah,
means that Islam has a lot to hide that we're
yeah. I
just
know, but
showing.
according to them, Islam doesn't have anything to hide. No, they say
Then
it's
then we could say
complete.
anything and like we'll be wrong. It would be very easy to say, no, you're wrong because so, and it's not really revealing any secrets, is it?
Well, Sunnis claim that Quran is complete, but Shia, see, I'm a former 12 Shia, and Shias believe that Quran isn't complete until Imam Mahdi comes back. He's gonna reveal the true Quran. I'm like, oh, these delusions about Imam Mahdi coming back with Jesus with the sword or something. I'm like, yeah, keep
Isn't
on
it
waiting
funny
for this.
like, when we see a cult and they believe that some savior is going to come back in a few years, or like there's going to be an event that's going to happen, and either they have a date that they expect the thing to happen, or it's open ended. We know that it's BS, right?
Yeah,
Like
and
when they
all
say there's
these,
going to be
even
a spaceship.
Christianity has, yeah, even
Yeah,
Christianity has been saying it since the beginning. I mean, there were countless times they said Jesus was gonna come back. I mean, there was, I think, one time in the 14 or 1500s, Christians claimed Jesus was gonna come back, and he never did. I mean, y'all
and
gonna wait till he comes
mhm.
back? I mean, damn, this okay. I guess keep on waiting then. Keep on waiting a million years. But yeah, but what I was gonna actually talk about was this. Well, the YouTube algorithm usually sends me crappy videos, but this time they blessed me with a video that was from 3 years ago, from 2019, early 2019. This Norwegian atheist uploaded this video. Apparently, this is a I'm gonna send you the link later after my call's finished. Maybe it would be good if you could do a review on it. So this Muslim reporter from BBC, and it's obvious from his behavior, he's one of those moderate Muslims or liberal Muslims, as they're called. He was doing the video about Salman Rushdie's satanic verses, and he went to the Muslim area. I believe this was in London. I'm not sure which European country, but it kind of looked like London to me. I'm not sure. And he went to these majority Muslim areas where the Muslim lives, and he was, yeah, I believe it was London, and he was passing down the satanic verses. He was basically showing the people and asking this religious Muslim what they think of it. Of course, they all hated it. But this one guy in particular, he interviewed, he didn't like it. And the guy asked the interviewer, "Are you Muslim?" He's like, "Yeah, I am a Muslim." But he wanted to ask about the book, and he finishes with the guy. But then when he was talking to these two Muslim women, this guy comes back again, snatches the book out of his hand, the satanic verses, and yells, "F you, mother effer, F you," because the interviewer is a Muslim too, Basically to him it was an insult that a Muslim was asking these Muslims such questions. And he grabs the book and he burns it. I don't know where he takes the book, but apparently he burns the book. And the Muslim reporter from BBC is shocked. He's astounded. He can't believe what had just happened, and he was afraid the guy was going to come back and probably attack him again.
He
So he was
must be
trying to
living
watch it.
under a rock. Like
Yeah,
that's the
well,
privilege of these,
liberal Muslims. Yeah, and I can't blame him because he probably, from the way he sounded to me, the reporter was probably one of those. He comes from probably a well-established, probably a kind of rich family, but they probably didn't tell him about how Muslims really are, probably from where they come from. And in his mind, especially, this is mostly in America, because in America you have Muslims who support LGBTQ. I shit you. They support I'm like, "Dang, y'all gonna be surprised when y'all go back to your former Muslim countries and you claim this stuff, Y'all might be killed or jailed for what you believe." Man, many Muslims in America, the American Muslims here are deluded. Their belief in Western ideas contradict the Muslim belief. So this guy, what was interesting is what he said last. He was like, he himself didn't like the book, but he said literally that people shouldn't be banned, they should be barred from basically talking about their ideas. And I'm gonna make a video later about this and talk about his contradictions. So even though he's a Muslim, he couldn't believe that Muslims were behaving this way. And I'm thinking, dude, you're a reporter. Hasn't this guy been to an Islamic country? He doesn't know how Muslims behave. And
I
to
feel
me, I
like if he
think
did just a little bit of research online, he would still, like, 3
he
years
probably
ago.
he probably thinks they're Islamophobic. So
Mm.
that's probably why he does it. He thinks because some I don't know, maybe some redneck or maybe some Christian guy is talking about it. He thinks, oh, they're being hateful. They don't know what they're talking about. But I don't know. I mean, it's his job as a reporter to know that already. I'm surprised. But the video was 3 years ago, so because of the Salman Rushdie attack, YouTube algorithm blessed me with this video that I watched, and it was kind of interesting. And yeah, yeah, well, yeah, when Khomeini did the fatwa, he did it in 1989, a year after the book was published in 1988. And I know some people claim that he and his associates probably never even read the book. And when I was watching, I sometimes watched the Apostate Prophet and his Christian buddy, I forgot his name,
David?
David, yeah,
Yeah.
David Wood, yeah.
You
And
know what's funny is, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
yeah,
well, it's funny and sad. The guy who stabbed Salman Rushdie says he hasn't read the book, and he pled not guilty after stabbing Salman Rushdie, which is
wow, he pled
mind
not
blowing.
guilty.
Yeah,
My God, yeah. I didn't know about the verdict, but yeah, it's crazy. And believe it or not, I believe he was a Shia Arab. I don't think he was a Shia Iranian. The Shia Arabs show more devotion to the supreme leader of Iran than we Iranians do. And believe it or not, we don't. And they don't talk about that in my country because basically the government controls everything in Iran. And believe it or not, many of us are sick of that. And I left Islam when I was 18. I'm 32 right now. So, the way I left Islam is this is what I told myself, like, a lot of things didn't make sense. And to be honest, this is how I came about it. So when I was around 16, 17 years old, I was on this thing called Yahoo. You remember Yahoo Answers?
Hmm.
It's kind of similar
Kind of
to
like
Quora.
Quora, yeah.
Quora, yeah, yeah. Before Quora, Yahoo Answers was really famous, and
Hmm.
this is before Yahoo declined as a website, and this was when I was when I was still a Muslim, and I called myself a proud 12 Shia Muslim. I wrote it in my headline, and then I noticed a couple of Sunnis, especially this Sunni Muslim woman, was calling me names and telling me that I'm not a real Muslim because I'm a Shia. And they're like, so the Sunni guy explained to me that, yeah, it's because, you Shias, because Shias actually insult Aisha. They do. They insult her. That's considered the most revered woman in Islam. And Sunnis consider her the most important. And Shias insult her. And, Shias believe that they believe that Islam was passed down through blood, through it was inherit, it went through the Imams, the 12 Imams that are supposedly related to the Prophet Muhammad. Whereas Sunnis say no, it goes to the Caliphs because they're the rightful heirs. Shia say no, it's through Imam Ali and all that. But yeah, and I was like, why is there Sunnis insulting me like that? I'm a Muslim. But then that's when I noticed, actually, when I did my own research, found out a lot of these Sunnis really do not like Shias. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here? All these Sunnis despise Shias and call us names. They said we're not really Muslims to begin with, which later on, when I became an ex-Muslim, I'm like, well, thank God they don't consider me an Muslim to begin with, I guess, if
Do you
let's
think
say,
ex-Shias are ex-Muslims?
I believe so. I mean, hell, they are. I mean, literally,
Sorry, no, let me rephrase that. Do you think they're viewed by Muslims as ex-Muslims, by Sunnis as ex-Muslims?
oh, many of them probably don't. So I guess,
Yeah, you. You got out.
yeah, no, I got out. Yeah, yeah. If let's say they manage to somehow make Islam a majority religion in the West, I don't have to worry. Well, this ex-Sunnis may have to worry. I'd be like, well, you guys didn't even consider me Muslim to begin with, so I guess I'm off the hook.
Hmm.
Probably not. I don't know. In Iran, my family knows that I'm not a. I told them that I'm not an ex. That I don't believe in Islam. My family, I don't worry about my own family. They're not like they're religious, but they're not fanatics. That's the good part. You got the religious people, and then you got your religious fanatics, which is completely different. The religious fanatics are the ones who go around and killing their own children if they don't believe. I mean, I where I live in the U.S., there was this guy. I don't know if you heard about it. This was all over the news. This Egyptian Muslim guy killed his two daughters like about 10 years ago, about a decade ago, where apparently he found out they were dating, they had boyfriends. So when he was sitting in the driver's seat, he shot both of them in the head. And when he shot the first daughter, the second daughter begged him not to shoot him, but he shot her anyway. This monster killed both of his daughters. And one of my friends told me that there was more to the story, that apparently the mom didn't care. So the mom is also guilty as well. But after 10 years of searching for him, I guess apparently he came back. He made a dumb decision of coming back to America, and the authorities caught him. And he was pleaded guilty. I mean, you can't just kill people in the U.S. and get away with that. We don't have apostasy laws here. You can't do stuff like that. And this was an Egyptian Muslim who did this. And apparently, Egyptian Muslim probably got a thing against my people, because I say this because my brother is married, and his wife is from Panama, and basically They were trying to take a vacation to go to Egypt, so they gave a visa to his wife, but they didn't give a visa to my brother. And we think probably some sort of racism because we're Iranian, or maybe because we're Shia. I don't know. Maybe they think my brother is Shia, or maybe because he's Iranian, they're not giving it to him. So it was kind of strange that they didn't give a visa to him, but they gave it to his wife. I was like, because there's tensions between Iranians and Arabs online all the time,
Mhm.
and yeah, I mean, uh, I know how Muslims like to claim that they didn't force their religion upon us, and when I was a Muslim, even when I became an ex-Muslim, I believed that they didn't spread their religion in the beginning. But then you do your research and you found out no, they did. They did force a religion upon my people. You know, I mean, uh, it was bizarre. And what is weird is that the liberals in America support the Muslim theory that Muslims did not spread by the sword. I mean, are you serious? There are historians. There was an Arab historian. I forgot his name. He was like the most famous Arab historian of all time. I don't remember his name, but this is how he died. He died by the weight of his book. And I know when he was writing his books that were on shelf, probably like hit him on the head and ended up killing him. He was like writing something. I don't know his name, but he actually recorded the attacks when the Arabs attacked Persia during ancient times, the Muslims, and he was kind of like proud of it, proud of the attack that they were killing my people. And uh, I gotta look it up because my friend has the documents. Uh, but it's in my language. It's not in English. I gotta I gotta find a way to translate it, and it's bizarre that liberals take sides with the Muslims when it comes to many issues, and yeah, it's the conservative Christians that take the side of the ex-Muslims. I'm like, it should kind of be the opposite, which is kind of weird because when you look at Christians and Muslims, I know they like to claim they're different, and I know Apostate Prophet said that, but I disagree with them. It's just that one of them wears a veil, the woman in Islam wears a veil, the Christian doesn't. But when you hear them talk, they kind of sound similar to me. They both sound very fanatic like. I know Christians might not like that in the comment section, but
There's a lot of similarities, and I'm not going to get into arguments with
uh,
Christians about, oh, but Jesus is better than Muhammad and all that stuff. Um,
yeah,
that's not the point. Like, if you watch
yeah,
my live stream, if someone does watch my live stream, the past one, I spoke to a few Christians on that live stream, and a lot of their logic when it comes to, because God said so, or like falling back on certain fallacies, is very, very similar to Muslims.
yeah,
And in some ways, there were attempts to have like conservative Christians and Muslims kind of align, because at least they're preserving, some kind of societal values, is how they see it, like the
hmm,
whole Jordan Peterson movement. But
yeah,
you're right, a lot of Christians these days tend to really oppose Islam, and then by extension tend to kind of support
yeah,
us.
yeah,
um, which I always make it clear, if you want to come here to learn more about, what I'm saying, or to hear my point of view, you're more than welcome, whatever your religion is.
yeah,
But make sure that you realize I'm not, choosing
yeah, yeah.
Christianity in favor instead
Yeah.
of
No, no,
Islam.
no, no. I
Yeah.
know that you don't, and I'm an
No,
ex-Muslim too,
not
so
you. Yeah. I'm just
yeah,
telling
no,
the, anyone
but
in
that,
the audience.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
And yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
even though I'm an ex-Muslim, I tend to get along, let's say, with a Muslim than a Christian because let's be honest here, America's kind of different than other Western nations. There's a lot of emphasis on race here, and here's the thing, I know there was a flooding that happened in Pakistan a few days ago. But there was a flooding that happened in my country. I don't know if you remember last year in Iran, there was a nasty flooding that happened, killed a lot of people. Not as much as the people that flooded in Pakistan this year. They were way more affected. But when it happened in Iran last year in my country, some of these Christians on the comment section write some horrific stuff. While the Muslims were praying for Iran to basically heal, the Christians, you could tell from the comment, this was from the Christians. I mean, they were
Mhm.
writing that, oh, they deserved it because they don't support Israel. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? You're
Mhm.
you're you're glad my people are dead because they have different political views, and these are the same people that bitch at liberals for not for having different views than them. You know, they're like, oh, why can't you guys just accept me for who I am because I support Trump? Yet they go around and talk crap to other people because they happen to have different political beliefs than them. And I'm like, y'all don't know how many of us are sick of this Israel Palestine crap. Many of us are indifferent. Many Iranians, uh, they don't know that because they think because the government of Iran is fanatic. They think we as the people are. We're not like that. Many Iranians are sick of this Iran Israeli Palestine bullcrap. We're indifferent to that, and we don't even care. Like me, I'm not pro Palestinian or pro Israeli. I don't care about that stuff. And you know, I mean, I'm definitely not pro Palestine because during the Iran Iraq war, when it was happening, Palestinians supported Saddam Hussein. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that till a few years ago. I found out, I knew that a lot of Arab states, excluding, I think, Syria and Libya, because I know Gaddafi supported Iran during the Iran Iraq war. I know Saudi Arabia and many others supported Saddam Hussein, including the Palestinians. And then I, when I did my research, found out, and that pissed me off a lot because in Iran, when I was a kid, they used to show this, fictional story about this Palestinian kid whose house was bombed by the Israelis, right? And basically, they were trying to make us, hate Israel, and basically, I felt so bad. I'm like, damn, these Israelis, why did they do that to these Palestinians? And then I grew up finding out the Palestinians all along were supporting Saddam Hussein when he was throwing those chemical weapons on my people and killing us. I mean, more than 1 million Iranians died. A lot of Iraqis died as well. I mean, and it was a 8-year bloody war. I wasn't born when that war was happening. I was born like a year and a half after that war ended. But uh, it was bizarre, and sometimes during school time, my mom would. I asked her. She would say, even my friend would tell me that they would go under the desk because they just were bombing different areas because they were just from Iraq passing at full speed. So there were always sirens going on,
Mhm.
Like imagine this happening in the US and every time you're in school, you have to go under a desk because you think an airplane is gonna bomb your school or kill you. And yeah,
Unfortunately, a lot of people have had that experience in a lot of the countries that you've mentioned already.
yeah, yeah. I know that there was a genocide in Rwanda happened like in the 90s, but that was tribal. And I actually talked to a lady that was from Rwanda. And she was really nice, and she told me that, and asked her about that. I'm like, was it like 800,000 people, or was it more? She said it was actually more than 1 million people that died in Rwanda. It wasn't 800,000. It was way more than that. And she said only her uncle on her dad's side survived. A lot of her family members killed one another because they were from the different tribes. I was like,
Mhm.
wow, I was speechless. Like, I
Yeah.
couldn't believe that. I mean, only one of her family members is alive, and
Well, we're getting a little bit off topic, to
yeah,
be honest
yeah,
with the
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
sorry, but
that's
yeah,
okay.
I know, uh, I but yeah, that video about Samarashi was kind of eye-opening, but yeah, but later on
Mhm.
I'll send you the link. Maybe then you can watch it, and I
I
guess
think I've seen it before, but I could probably
yeah,
easily find it again.
yeah, yeah,
And I've people keep asking me about something that happened in Iran recently.
yeah.
I really
I
don't want to
just heard
talk
it.
about it at
I
the
don't know much
moment.
about it. I don't know much about it. I
Yeah.
just heard about it. But yeah, I found this Israeli guy who was posting a pic on his channel about it. And I don't know how the picture of the great granddaughter of Khomeini keeps popping up. And they're trying to show the old picture of her, but the old picture is not her. is a picture of the great granddaughter of Khomeini, who's still very much alive. She lives in the West, you know. And I'm
Okay.
like, why is
Yeah, there
why?
must be some misinformation there.
Yeah,
That's why
there's
I don't
some
want to talk
amazing.
about anything. Like I
Yeah,
really
yeah,
need to
yeah.
look into it
But the
first.
thing is, I don't know much about that stabbing. But yes, that actually happens. Yeah, it was something about, I believe, the hijab covering, because yeah, the woman in Iran are sick of that hijab. You know, they're trying to get rid of it. But yeah, they've been protesting about that since before even the revolution came about.
Mhm.
The woman in Iran don't want to wear the hijab. I'm like,
Yeah, I hope I really need to look into that topic, and people have been asking me to comment on it. I don't comment on things if I'm not well researched on the
yeah,
topic. And honestly, I've been very like overwhelmed lately. It's hard to get into such depressing topics, but I know I need to get in. Like I need to raise some awareness for it, so I will get around to doing that eventually.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyhow,
Yeah.
yeah. Thanks for calling in today and sharing with us.
Sure. I don't know what days you do your show, but maybe next time I'll jump in and talk more about myself. I just want to talk about this Sam Rushdie thing. So I thought it
Sure.
was
Yeah.
interesting. But yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well,
Well,
have
thanks
a
for
good.
having me.
Yeah, for sure. Have a good rest of your day.
All right, you too.
Bye bye. All right. So we got two more callers. I'll take a couple of comments first, and just FYI, there's a lot of back and forth in the comments about Palestine, Israel. Like I've said before, um, I don't want this to turn into a discussion about Palestine, Israel, because that's not the topic of the live stream or the channel. And to make it clear, that's not me saying, "Oh, I support Israel," but I just don't want to talk about it right now. I don't, and I think there's a lot more that I'd have to list before I even tell you what I think about the topic. So yeah, can we please try to keep it on topic in the comments? Thank you, everyone. Okay, so a couple of comments. Frankie was asking, how do we respond to Muslims who refuse to accept that the Quran is just another book that plagiarized other religious works? They keep saying Bible or Torah is the corrupted one. I I don't really know how to answer that because I don't bother trying to force someone to believe something. I just like sometimes I point to examples of Islam borrowing or copying Judaism, for example. But that's not really going to convince someone because they think that, of course, it's borrowing stuff from Judaism because it's all from the same God and everything else in Judaism is corrupted. It's kind of an unfalsifiable claim, you know? So uh, the you can't really argue with something that's not provable or unprovable. So I don't even bother. And thank you very much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. It's way too generous of you. Please don't be this generous. Please, don't overdo it. Or, I'm just too flattered. I don't know what to say. I appreciate that, Aladdin, I guess. Thanks so much. And someone in the comments, Misha, had asked me before, like, which is the best way to donate. I appreciate all attempts to help me out. But just FYI, YouTube is usually the most brutal when it comes to taking a cut from the donations. But yeah, but I truly appreciate it. Okay, we've got Shaun and Sultan. I'm adding Shaun first. In 3, 2, 1. Hey, Shaun, how's it going?
Hey, good. How are you doing? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. I'm good. Thanks for asking. So
Okay.
tell us about yourself.
Well, thanks for having me on. Like, I just found your YouTube channel,
Okay.
and I've been enjoying it recently. So I just heard about this live chat and wanted to jump on. I grew up in America, and the topic I wanted to talk about was Ahmadiyya in particular. And
Okay.
I'm not really sure, like, if you have gotten into Ahmadiyya in your previous videos at all.
Not quite. No, not yet.
Okay. Well, hopefully I can bring a little bit of light into what it's like.
Mhm.
My mother and father were from South Asia. I don't want to say the exact, but it's between India and Pakistan. And I was born in America, and I grew up. Our family was, I would say, semi-moderate Islam. It was leaned to all the pillars, fulfilling all the pillars, but we were somewhat liberal in that my sister didn't cover her hair. And, we had American friends and so forth. But as far as like praying, fasting, reading Quran, going to the masjid, that was mandatory for us. And our family is Sunni Muslim. Most of my family was actually back home. I didn't have a lot of family in America growing up from my background. But my father got into Ahmadiyya Islam right around the time I was 16 years old. And I did not know much about it, but over the years, and this would have been about 1992 when I was 16 years old. And so in the years since then, I've come to learn quite a bit about it. And in the last chat you had with Persian King, you guys actually touched very briefly on the idea of a Mahdi, a second coming.
Mm-hmm.
And Ahmadiyya specifically addresses that. They claim that Gulab Mirza Ahmed was the Mahdi, the second coming. And that's one of the ways in which they differ from mainstream Sunni Islam, but there's others as well. But just to give you a little difference, I don't know if you have any questions.
I was wondering, what was it that prompted your dad to turn to Ahmadiyya?
Well, I think what prompted him was Ahmadiyya presents itself as a more intellectual and more refined version of Islam than mainstream Sunni Islam. And my dad was a somewhat open-minded person. He was a physician. He had come to America on his own, the first person in his family. And I think he leaned towards that. He was very intellectual and curious. He didn't want to leave Islam. He was not, I don't even think that was an option for him to become an ex-Muslim. He didn't believe in becoming ex-Muslim anyway, but he did want to become a more refined intellectual. He saw some of the problems with Sunni Islam, just the ignorance. And I guess that is one of the things that attracts people to Ahmadiyya Islam. However, I've come to understand that Islam, I believe, is a cult, or it shares almost 90% characteristics with cults. But to take it to another level, I think Ahmadiyyas are just 100% cult. And so, so when he found out,
it's controversial to say that Islam is a cult, but I think that applies to a lot of religions. Like if you look at what classifies a cult as a cult, it is a cult. But I understand. Can you give us examples of why Ahmadiyya is more of a cult than Islam?
Okay. I think Ahmadiyya specifically specifies on Ghulam Mirza Ahmed. It concentrates on him. So Ahmadiyyas have their own mosques. They don't go to traditional mosques. And I wanted to get into that topic particularly because my dad actually made our home an Ahmadiyya mosque for Friday prayers, so that the Ahmadiyyas did. And the reason they don't go to mainstream mosques, or they're told not to, they're not even told to pray next to Muslims, is because in Islam, you have to accept the chain of prophecies. Like you can't be a Muslim unless you accept Noah, Abraham, Jesus, etc., etc. Ahmadiyyas believe that Ghulam Mirza was prophesied by Prophet Muhammad himself. And so if you don't accept him, you're therefore not accepting the chain of prophets. And so they think that distinguishes them from mainstream. And so I would say that's one of the ways, and I think they're a cult, because they specifically...
how do they believe... sorry to interrupt, but how do they believe that there's another prophet, though Muhammad is supposed to be the seal of prophets, is the wording of it?
Okay, so they refer to some hadiths, and I've looked into these hadiths, and I'm telling you, it's complete BS to me. I'm not here to defend it, of course. It's never, like in most hadith and Quran, these people are interpreting quite a bit. It's never going to come out and say, hey, a Mahdi is coming in this year and this time. There's an allusion to a person who would unite the ulama, and he would bring some reformation. And I think in that they read into it. But Ahmadiyya is a very big... It's not a sect of Islam, it's a movement within Islam, and it's in the millions, and in particular in India, Pakistan, and I believe in Africa, they have quite a bit of members. Even in the United States, Canada, their headquarters are in Virginia. So it's not as small as some people may think. And I would say in some ways they're more dangerous. One of the ways they financially manipulate their members. I don't know if you heard about the Pentagon Papers.
No.
Okay, so like WikiLeaks, there were some in the last few years. Somebody had found some papers which had, and you can Google Pentagon Papers, that showed some of the financial crimes that were being committed by heads of state and various people. They were creating secret bank accounts and offshore accounts to hide money and tax. And one of the organizations that was outed in that was Ahmadiyya movement. They charged their members 10% of their income. So zakat is 5% of your annual income, goes to charity. Ahmadiyya requests 10% of your annual income to their organization. Because my father was a doctor, he was writing a very large monthly check to this group every month, hiding it from me. But I did find out, and it was, I'm sorry to say, almost the end of the relationship I had with my father.
Ouch.
Because one of the conditions in the, once again, Islam has mentioned as 5 pillars. If you want to ask, like, what is a Muslim? It's a person who practices the 5 pillars. If he doesn't practice it, you could still say he's a non-practicing Muslim because he hasn't renounced Islam. But Ahmadiyya actually has 6 conditions to be a Muslim. I think it's called the 6 conditions of Bayat. And one of the conditions is you have to declare that Ghulam Mirza Ahmed is more dear to you than your own family.
But isn't that what Sunnis say about Muhammad?
I'm sorry?
Isn't that what Sunnis say about Muhammad? That he has to be closer to you or dearer to you than your own family?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. They say that. But now they're adding Ghulam Mirza Ahmed on top of that. So Ahmadiyyas don't try and contradict any Islam. They don't speak against Prophet Muhammad. They just kind of add on, I think, in a way, this. And they're very much, how are they refined? They talk about the jihad of the pen. So Ahmadiyyas don't believe in, supposedly they don't believe in jihad or violence. That's one of the ways that they're distinguished. They believe in jihad of the pen, whatever that means. I think it's actually, they're trying to, like, it's a cult, so they're trying to, like, portray themselves as more beneficial than they actually truly are. But that's one way. They eliminate all, they dispute all the verses in which Muslims are commanded to fight non-believers or engage in anything that's violence or so that's one way. But another way it's a cult is they still today have their leader. So Ghulam Mirza Ahmed claimed in 1900 he was the Mahdi, and he was in India, and he gained quite a large following. And when he passed away, his son took over the movement. And then after that, his grandson took over, and that's the point in which my father joined. But today, they're on the 5th Khalifa, who is the son of they're on the 5th son of the original Ghulam Mirza Ahmed. So it's a family business.
Mm-hmm. And that's not suspicious to the followers?
Not any more than mainstream Islam is suspicious to their followers.
Right.
No, they and I guess in a lot of ways they are even more devout because they have a modern, like, with mainstream Islam, you're talking about 1400s, and people are aware, intellectual people are actually aware of the fallacies of the hadith and the contradictions and so forth. So they're kind of looking for something a little more safe and secure. And I think maybe they find it in Ahmadiyya because there's a current guy there. They don't have to look to the past. He can direct them right now. So my father had a satellite dish installed on our home, Ahmadiyya TV, and he would spend hours and hours listening to their programs, their khutbahs. They would, one of the ways in which they would manipulate their followers, they claimed they were building masjids to spread Ahmadiyya. So they would request a lot of donations, and my father got very much into this contribution. Another way it's a cult is in that they will actually move you up the organization the more you contribute to them. It's almost like a military where you can move up to a certain. So he was like a regional commander for the Ahmadiyya in the Midwest part of America.
It sounds a bit like an MLM too, right?
Like what?
Like an MLM, like a multi-marketing, multi-level marketing. Oops.
Absolutely, absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. These people are very smart in what they're doing, very successful. So because there was no Ahmadiyya mosque in my city, and it's a fairly major city in America, but we have masjids here, but they are mainstream. Now, in our masjids, nobody would have cared if an Ahmadiyya had come and prayed. I mean, nobody would have known. But Ahmadiyyas, like I said, are commanded not to pray next to Muslims. They're not real Muslims. So my dad opened our home as a Ahmadiyya mosque on Fridays. And he had a room constructed on the back for prayers onto our home. Now, he worked on Fridays, and at that time I was 16. So there were a couple of Fridays where I came home to my home that I had grown up in, and there were 50 people in the room. Nobody was home except 50 strangers who had wandered in and were using my father's home as a prayer. They were looking at me as if, who's this guy in my own home? This only stopped, and this went on and on and on. And I was telling my father, I was trying to reason with my father throughout this whole period, and it was just a waste of time. But it only stopped when the people began to park in our neighbors' driveways, and they complained to the homeowners association, and my father was forced to stop.
I was just going to ask you, is that even legal? Like
No,
building
it's not.
that shed
No,
too
it's
and
not.
stuff? Yeah.
No, it's not. And it, like I said, it was 92, so it's not modern. But no, it's not legal. And if people had chosen to go the route of that, they could have. He was using his home as a prayer. But that's how in deep he was and how much he wanted to be seen as a leader within that movement. But I'll say this about my father. He honestly thought he was doing something right. He thought he was leading ignorant Muslims out of that, like, Islam in which, like, you're just like, you might blow yourself up, or you might into somewhat more of an intellectual Islam. He kind of rationalized it that way. But in the process, the family became very dysfunctional. I had a brother, I had a sister, and because my like I said, I told my father straight up, this is bullshit. Especially when I saw all the amount of money that he was giving them. And from that point on, I don't think he saw me really as his priority as son.
I'm really sorry to hear that. That's very difficult to go through.
Yeah. Another thing, I don't know if you're in a rush for time. I can call back another time.
That's okay.
But another thing about this Ahmadiyya is they believe Jesus Christ survived the crucifixion, and he traveled east and eventually landed in Kashmir. And he preached in Kashmir. His name was Yus Asaf. And he passed away in Kashmir. And there's a grave there in which he's buried. And if you look on the BBC, they actually did a documentary, like, which I don't believe it either. But that's another aspect of this Ahmadiyya people might not know that differentiates them from mainstream. They believe Jesus began preaching Islam in Kashmir and passed away there.
Did you ever? What stopped you from believing in this stuff?
Okay, well, I never believed it. I'm different from a lot of guys. I follow you. I follow a couple of the other ex-Muslims, just a couple. But I'm different than a couple of guys like Abdullah Samir. And he was devout. I never believed this stuff. Like, even from when I was 4 years old, I knew it was bullshit. I don't know why. I just had that critical thinking thing. And I think I remember when it was. My mother came to me to tell me one night, and my mother, God bless her, but she was a religious fundamentalist. She would offer her nightly prayers every night, and she would come and blow on her breath on my face as I was laying in bed. And the reason she did that is because she thought, since she had just prayed, like, her breath was holy, and if she blew it on me, it would bestow some kind of blessings upon me, because that's how powerful the Quran and Salat is. But one night she told me the story of Abraham, how he was commanded to sacrifice his son. And the only thing I could think of when she told me the story is, if you hear God said kill me, are you going to do it? Like, that's the only thought that came into my mind. Like, what you're basically telling me is like, do whatever God says, even if it's kill you. And that's all I could think of is, oh my God, is this woman going to kill me someday? And I will say this, she ended up causing brain damage, mental illness, relationship dysfunction, and financial loss. I didn't die, but those are just some of the consequences.
I'm really sorry to hear that. I hope you're doing better now.
Well, my father has passed away.
Okay.
And most of his money, I believe, he donated to Ahmadiyya movement in Islam. That's one of the, I believe he left his estate to them. I don't even know because I don't have any evidence. As far as my mother, she and I don't have any relationship because because I don't pray, fast, read Quran, and more recently I began to send her hadiths about Muhammad committing these various crimes like adultery, sexual slavery, on and on and on. Do you have 1 second? Just real quick.
Sure.
I wrote this down just the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Because like, if you want to say, hey, you are the perfect guy, or I'm the perfect guy. Like, okay, well, what's a perfect guy? Now, if we commit adultery as opposed to being faithful, who's perfect? I would say the guy who's faithful is perfect, right? Now, who's more perfect, a guy who's married to his wife or a guy who does child marriage? And I'll go on. So adultery, child marriage, polygamy, domestic abuse, religious intolerance, sexual slavery, rape of Safia, and more, assassination of political rivals and critics, cruel and unusual punishment for petty crime, and human sex trafficking. Because if Maria al-Qibtiyya was given to him as a prize from an Egyptian emperor, and then he later on had a child with her, even though he wasn't married to her, I believe she was the domestic help of Hafsa. That's the classic term for human sex trafficking. She was brought.
I mean, even if you marry her, like that's still just putting a label on it. It doesn't make it okay.
They're saying marriage, so there was no marriage. If you were to go in a time machine back there, he didn't marry her. At the most he may have said a couple Quran verses and then did what he did with her, and that was the end of it. Marriage, of course, is like spending evenings with your wife.
Yeah, I mean, even if he did, the thing is, for him, marriage, he doesn't even need witnesses for marriage. Like, he just needs to say a few words, and that's a marriage. But that's even if he did do some kind of ceremony and whatnot, he's still splitting his time between 11 plus women. Is that really what a marriage is about? Like getting a night?
So I have come to think that his only actual marriage was to Khadija. He married her for. Obviously, he worked for her, and then she may have needed companionship. Who knows what the situation was? But the history says he was faithful to her at that point. Every marriage he did after that was not a marriage. It was either for a political allegiance, like Aisha, like he wanted to marry Abu Bakr's daughter, is going to forge some kind of alliance, or it was like Juwaira or Safia were taken as slaves after he went on military expeditions. None of these are real marriages. Marriages is like, you establish a relationship. I only think Khadija was the only marriage. After that, he either had basically sexual slaves or just marriages for personal advantage or personal profit.
Well, what do you say to people who say that he married widows and stuff because he was such a nice guy?
I would not argue with any Muslim because it's a waste of time. But so what are they saying? He's a rich guy who just supported a bunch. This rationalizes. Okay, so if he was able to financially support 11 women, then he was a rich guy. He must have been
simultaneously. They say that he was poor and like he was very generous and gave away all his money and stuff. But at the same time, he would get like a fifth of the money of the war booty, right? Isn't that true?
Yes.
That like when
he would. I think he would give 20%. So he would subcontract criminal gangs to raid. I mean, it would be like if me and you got a couple of our friends and went and knocked off the grocery store. The earliest Muslims, I think, were the people that he paid to do caravan raids, and then when they saw that they were making money off this thing, they were like, hell yeah, I'll convert. And then they began to do more and more caravan raids. So armed robbery was almost the start of his career, but not on his own, by posting like Craigslist ads to people. It's like, hey, you'll get 20% of whatever the heck we knock off. Plus, you may be able to like have a sex slave. Like, I don't know if at that time he was letting them have the sex slaves, but I think I have to look into the timeline, because I know later he did for sure. But it was almost that. It was almost like, hey, do you guys want to come do some robberies with me? Well, you'll get paid. And I think those guys at the time were unemployed. He sought unemployed, ignorant young men to ride along with him and do his dirty work.
Wait, wasn't Umar ibn Khattab, didn't he go to kill the Prophet initially or something? Like
I would have to look into that story. I know Umar ibn al-Khattab was even more brutal than Muhammad. And I think the more and more I've studied Islam, the more and more I've actually come to think that a lot of this actually might not even be Muhammad. Like the stuff they're writing,
added after his death, kind of thing, or like he was pressured.
Yes. Like Muhammad became almost like a blank canvas that everybody is just writing whatever the fuck excuse my language, whatever they want to write on. He's like a person that in modern times people can use for something. Like any leader can use him, any religious scholar can use him, any imam can use him, even a person in his family can use them against their own family members. You know, oh, you're not fasting, whatever the case may be. Like he has, if you went back into that time, I actually wonder how much is real that we are now assuming. Like some of it, like has been, you know, it's present in the Quran, the Hadith, the Sira, and so forth. And so, hey, we got to kind of believe that that's all we have to go on. But much of the stuff, like for example, the Hadiths, which Muslims practice. I mean, they practice them. If you do 5 prayers, that's Hadith, because Quran only says morning, midday, and evening, 3. But who actually knows? And it says, who actually knows who is the actual person who first said, hey, let's do 5 prayers? It might not have been Muhammad. It might have been some guy who added it on later on in some country because he wanted his people. And I'm saying in this way, Islam, I think personally developed, and everything has been just attributed to Muhammad. I mean, they can even say today, I saw, when I want to have a good laugh.
Like,
I'm sorry?
Is that what you're going to say? Because someone can say today, I saw a dream of Muhammad saying so and so. And if you see a dream of Muhammad, then it's real. Like that's the mentality, is that if Muhammad shows up in a dream, that's actually him.
Well, I would say there's 2 things. One is they could be lying, but if they believe that, they're meeting psychological criteria for mental illness. Because psychosis is a belief in the unreal. It's no different than schizophrenia. I may say there's a blue elephant chasing me around my apartment. So if I believe that, then I'm not even basing in reality. So
I mean, but in
I think
a
a lot
dream,
of religion is mental illness.
I don't think in a dream it would qualify as psychosis, but I get what you mean, that if someone saw hallucinations or they had these ideas without religion, it would be considered mental illness. But with religion, it's past, it's kind of ignored.
I think it shares the characteristics with mental illness. Like mental illness is distinguished by a certain, like, okay, if you go to the doctor and they measure your blood sugar and it's above a certain level, they can diagnose you as diabetic. And if you have like your cells or whatever, they can, whatever the test is, they can diagnose you cancer, leukemia, so forth. So to me, like if you meet a certain set of characteristics, I think you are mentally ill. Now, those people can still work. They can still have faith. They don't have to be in the streets like going absolutely nuts. But I think they're mentally ill. And I think if you go under the surface, you'll actually see lots of issues in their, they'll have family problems. Like they don't talk to their brothers or sisters. They're very judgmental. They can't like establish a career because they're so concerned about being around Jews and Christians in the workplace and not being able to, I mean, there's a lot of ways this mental illness can turn around and affect you. And that's been my belief.
I'm a little hesitant to qualify it as a mental illness. I know where you're coming from, and I know that in the more devout cases, it does manifest in many of the same ways. Like someone who's paranoid, for example, right? Like someone who's paranoid to leave the house because everyone's spying on me. They might, a religious person might be paranoid. God is watching me all the time. I can't even like touch a woman's hand or like or interact with a certain believer of a different religion or a kafir or whatever. It can manifest very similarly. I'm just careful not to call it that, so it's not just adversarial and
okay. Could I make one argument against it? Just one devil's argument. Okay, so at the end of the day, Muslims, like, they believe dua, like God can intercede in your life, which is complete craziness. That might be mental illness in itself to think that.
I think go ahead.
But I was going to say, like, at the end of the day, what Muslims truly want is to go to heaven. I think that's what they want to do. Now, they believe, and you tell me whether this is mental
avoid
illness
hell, or
avoid going to hell.
Yeah.
Now, when a Muslim locks himself in like a bedroom or a bathroom or something, and he does some sinful activity, whatever. So how does he know that that's going to be held against him on the day of judgment? Do you know Muslims believe that there are recording angels around you at every single moment? I mean, you cannot not believe this and be a Muslim. So the recording angels are there at all times, and they are literally there, not figuratively there. They are there, and that they are writing down every single thing you're doing, and that is the whole meaning of life. This is why they want to pray, read. They're so paranoid that the recording angels are going to record their misdeeds or their lack of this thing and report it, that they're going to potentially end up in hell, and they want to avoid that outcome, and so they do what they do under pressure of the recording angels. Now, to me, that is mental illness.
Yeah, I used to say that exact same thing 2 years ago. Like not on a channel or something. And maybe I did mention it on some live streams, but I see where you're coming from. It's just that if we do classify something like that as mental illness, aside from the fact that it's more adversarial and whatnot, and it's not going to be productive, it's also a lot of people are going to suddenly become, classified as mentally ill from our point of view, and it's going to dilute, the cases of mental illness that we can treat, in real life, aside from the religion dogma. I do agree with what you're saying that had these symptoms be, popped up without religion being there, that would be very concerning in mental illness. And you do have a point that we should be aware that we're basically condoning something so insane. Like, for example, if it's happened before that a parent did kill their children because they think God told them so or something, like it's happened very recently too, be it because they came from a religious background or because of psychosis or some other mental health issue. But when we see Ibrahim almost do it, it's, a sign of devotion and whatnot. And it's good to talk about that and say, look, if this happened in any other context, it's insanity. But I wouldn't go ahead and label them all mentally ill, because then, it won't get us anywhere. And then people who are mentally ill, aside from religion, won't get help as often.
Right.
I see where you're coming from, though, and that's the thing. I just want to make sure that I, express my view on that. But yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I respect your view, and the way you explain things is very rational, and I like your channel, and I plan on continuing to watch your videos. But I hope I gave you like about Ahmadiyya. I don't know if you ever wanted to ask anything about Ahmad, because it still is a movement within Islam. It still is a very
you know what? I do want to talk about Ahmadiyya more. Well, not talk, but listen more about Ahmadiyya and look into it more in the future. And I want to have a live stream just for Ahmadis or ex-Ahmadis to call in, perhaps both. I don't know. So if you do want to reach out to me, I really am trying to keep up with my emails or Instagram DMs, but give it a try there. Or if you keep an eye out for announcements of live streams, I'll try to have one specifically for that topic, so I have as many Ahmadis or ex-Ahmadis as possible to talk about it, because it's not talked about enough, and I appreciate you like giving us some insight into it. Because even though the numbers aren't like, they're huge still, they're not as big as Sunnis, in terms of numbers, but that's still a lot of people who are going through it, so it's still important to talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so thank you very much for talking about it today. And is there anything else that you wanted to ask or talk about?
No, I mean there's just so many topics in Islam, and I would just ask like maybe in the future I'd like to join I could choose a topic that's of interest to me and possibly join in the future and discuss it with you.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks. You as well. Take care. Bye-bye. All right. Thank you, Shaun, for calling in. Wow, there was a lot of comments all at once. And yeah, I am trying to multitask. And to the callers, if you see me answering comments, I swear I am still listening. Okay. But I'm trying to keep track of everything at the same time. So let me read some comments that I had put aside. So there's this sentiment that I sometimes get from Christians, specifically Christians, I think. Something like this: I see somewhere in your heart you still defend Islam despite many child abuse in your country. I don't know what country you're talking about. And it happens in Islam country. Okay, now I confirm you are fake ex-Muslim. So when I push back on certain assertions that some people make about Islam, Muslims, or Muslim countries, or the Middle East, or something, that's not me saying, oh, there are no problems there. That's me pointing out, actually, like, you're going a bit too far with it. The truth is, or at least my opinion on this is so and so. They immediately take the stance that you must be a fake ex-Muslim, or you have a bit of Islam in you. That's why you're not agreeing with me. No, it doesn't mean that I have a bit of Islam in me. I'm trying to be as objective as possible. And you need to tolerate more the idea that you could be wrong without the other person being on the opposition, you know? That's not necessarily it. And yeah, thank you everyone for getting me to 10,000 subscribers. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad that I got there kind of organically. And so far the following has been fantastic. I really appreciate the live chat in my live streams and the comments. And I like that when someone makes you know, a bad comment, they're often corrected very quickly. So I appreciate that. There's a lot more. I may have missed some comments. By the way, thank you, Zoom Orbit, for the super chat. Says, congrats on 10K and keep up the good work. And Happy Camper as well. I appreciate it. Thanks for your hard work, Apostate Aladdin. I love these streams. So do I, and that's why I go on for, you know, 3 to 6 hours. Today, I only have one more caller left, but yeah, so I'm not going to go for 6 hours today, but I try to do streams twice a week, so I get everybody in. And to reiterate, just because I keep getting asked this by people who do donate, YouTube takes the biggest cut of donations. So if you really want to, especially when it comes to, like, you know, a slightly bigger amount that's not just for, you know, a comment highlight or something, PayPal or Patreon would be better in that order. But I truly appreciate anything that you give me. That's just more for your information. Anyhow, I think I caught up with all the comments. Now I have one last caller. The last caller is Sultan. Sultan, I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. How's it going, Sultan?
Hi, I'm okay. How are you doing, Aladdin?
I am great. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Islam a bit. And I'm an ex-Muslim. I left Islam, I think is now 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay.
And it was a big help for me. I grew up with Islam. I'm a Turkish woman, but I'm lucky to have been born in Germany. So I can show my face, as you can see on the picture.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, I grew up with Islam, but I don't know the real Islam. Only what my parents teach me about fasting, praying your 5 times, and reading the Quran and stuff. But I really had no idea what Islam really stands for. And I'm still shocked that we have 2022 and that still a religion like Islam is still has so many members, like so many billion people think is a good religion to follow. but only the fact I had get to know this after I left it. I had no idea about the apostasy laws, that you deserve death if you want to leave Islam. I had no idea about that. And only this fact, only this, in my opinion, should be enough to say this is not a religion or something good to follow, you know. I I feel ashamed that I was once a Muslim, seriously. And like I said, I can't understand people who think this is a good religion to follow. I completely disagree. And I'm posting on TikTok about religion, and I call myself an ex-Muslim. And I wanted to ask you too, because you have experience on TikTok too, and they never want to believe. I know other ex-Muslims on TikTok too, and they never want to believe us that we was ex-Muslims. Do you maybe know why they don't want to believe, or do you think they believe it but they don't want to admit it? I really would like to understand them, you know, like why we should lie about that we have leave it. So I don't understand, you know.
There are several reasons for that, I think, from my observations so far. And I'm rarely on TikTok these days. I never scroll on TikTok. It's just, yeah, I'm not criticizing those who do, just it affects me negatively. And when I post, it's always a negative outcome, partly because of the amount of incessant bullying by Muslims when often no one was talking to them, you know, like they make it their problem. But they do take it as a personal attack when you talk about Islam. So the reason why I think that's more prevalent on TikTok, especially, is first of all, the way that the algorithm feeds it to, you know, a Muslim side of TikTok, they will just flood together, and this like groupthink mentality, when you see everyone around you saying something and a comment has I don't know how many likes, and they're saying that's a fake ex-Muslim and I know it, and then everyone's going to be like, yeah, I guess that guy's right, and they are, you know, very kind of strong in their belief that you're a fake ex-Muslim. And you see that in every group in the world. Like whenever you see the people around you, it's kind of like a group bias. It's a social evolutionary mechanism, because usually it's good to stick with your group, kind of thing. I also think it's partly because a lot of the people on TikTok are younger and more gullible and more susceptible to this kind of group thing, because you want to fit in. You see your identity as, you know, Muslim, and you see that as the enemy, like Islam said, like the other Muslims say, and so on. And that's partly why as well. And they don't actually know, a lot of them don't actually know Islam, and once they see a comforting comment like, oh yeah, this is fake because so and so, they don't even look into it, and they're just comforted by this idea that by someone's authority, a Muslim's authority, which I trust by default more than a kafir, and all the people who like the comment, this is a fake video, or this is a fake person, therefore I'm just going to believe that and move on with my day. It's a lot easier than actually looking into it. So yeah, for all those reasons and more, TikTok is not a great place for ex-Muslims, especially that TikTok sides with Muslims when they mass report videos. It's very flawed in that sense, and they don't do a good job of even like appealing videos. Even if they put your video back, they'll give you a strike on your channel, and eventually they remove the whole channel, even though you did nothing wrong. Like even if they acknowledged, yeah, your video is fine. Anyway, that's my little rant about TikTok.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah, for me, I have lost 2 or 3 accounts on TikTok too because of the reporting. And yeah, I just wanted to say, Islam, like I said before, I don't like Islam at all. And if I do that on TikTok, they always came with, but in other religion is the same. Why you attack Islam? I talk about Islam because I know Islam, I grew up with it, and so I do understand them asking that, but it's like that. And like I said, you was a big help for me for leaving, and I really appreciate your work, and I hope you keep doing it. And I will not stop posting about it too. Maybe I can help someone to leave too. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say. And yeah,
I appreciate your words, and I know you said earlier that you were shocked, to realize the amount of billions of Muslims that exist, and
yeah,
how could they believe something like that? Um, as somebody already said, a lot of them aren't Muslims, or they haven't thought of it. But even if they have thought of it, they're ex-Muslim, but they're not counted, or they don't even care. They don't know about the label ex-Muslim. They're just not religious. So the numbers are inflated. But also, it is still shocking, though. And that's because a lot of people don't actually know exactly what their belief entails, or the full amount of it, um, or even what they believe. Even if it sounds horrible, they've just learned it too early on, or at a point that they were mentally vulnerable, so they never examined it before taking it in. So there's a lot of reasons for that, but it's not because they're horrible people or anything. Aside from, obviously, if someone's being actually horrible, then it is what it is. Um, and you said that you feel shame about your time spent as a Muslim, or that you
yeah,
believed at some point. You shouldn't, for many reasons. One of them being that you didn't believe in horrible things. Like, you believed in some version of Islam that you were taught, and like, it doesn't sound like you caused harm with your beliefs at the time. But
but
also, yeah, go ahead.
but I think it was still wrong for me because um, I had knew about God saying all believers will go to hell. I think even this is wrong to support something like this. Like, how the hell you can call yourself a loving God, and same time you say if you don't worship me, you deserve eternal pain. This is not a loving God, and I think I was wrong by supporting that because I was afraid. Uh, I'm honest. I wanted to save my own ass. I don't want to end up in eternal hell.
Hmm.
So that's why I say I feel ashamed because I knew like so many people will burn, but I was still part of it. And I think if you know this and you still support it, then you have to be blamed for it. I can see something wrong with you because like Islam calls non-believers the worst of creatures, and at the same time then Islam Muslims always demand for respect. They say you have to respect our religion, but sorry, if your religion calls me a worst of creatures, I will not respect it. I will not start insulting Islam, but I will say it's wrong to support it, and I don't like it. I don't see this as being disrespectful or spreading hate.
I agree with you there, and I don't think the answer, which is not your position, but I don't think the answer is like, well, no, you are the worst of people, and just getting in a shouting match. But at the same time, it does, like, if someone, someone can't have the higher ground and say, you can't insult my religion, especially not when it's, a kind of hateful in many ways. But I'm saying, I hope you don't feel shame about your time as a believer. You said it yourself. You were scared, and that's why you didn't think too hard, or like didn't leave the religion once you realized that they're going to hell and whatnot. You're trying to look out for
Yeah.
yourself. And I think even people who know that, they have a mental barrier sometimes, that, and it's, I don't want to say it's not their fault, but I see how they got there. And it applies with other religions as well, that they don't see the horribleness of believing such a thing, or condoning it, or being okay with it. And part of it is because it comes from a point of authority. Like, they think this is what it is. Like, what would me objecting to them going to hell do? It's not going to make a difference. it's only going to put me in God's crosshairs, right? So I'd rather not. So I try not to like be too harsh on my past self, and by extension, if you are very harsh on your past self, you're going to be harsher towards current believers, and it's not always productive. But like I said, that's not to excuse people when they have harmful beliefs, completely excuse them from responsibility, but it's good to understand where they're coming from, just like where you are coming from.
But you too know how they are sometimes. You can't excuse saying, yeah, okay, they were scared like me, and that's why they still Muslims or so. You too know how many comments you get. They are saying, oh, I can't wait to party in Jannah while you burn in Jahannam. You know how they enjoy the imagination of us
that is
burning
sadistic,
hell.
yeah.
Too many love the imagination of it, you know? They can't wait for it. I mean, how sick someone must be to enjoy something like this is
I think
can't
religion
understand.
dulls empathy, and some people just don't. Like, I myself never would have reveled in that. Like, I've never thought, yeah, I can't wait to see you burn in hell. Like, even when I was a believer, I thought, "Oh, you're wrong, and I just hope you don't burn in hell." Yeah, I can't really defend those people forever. Like, you really need to self-reflect at some point and think, how can I have such a hateful belief? But part of it is they justify it as, this is a horrible person who's causing other people to go to hell, so I can't wait to see them suffer. It's like when people fantasize about what they do to a tyrant, like Hitler or someone else, they see it as justified because they're causing harm to other people, therefore I can't wait for the revenge. But I think revenge is a bad mentality in general, but it doesn't mean letting people off the hook. Anyway, I just hope you're more compassionate towards yourself too.
Yeah, I try.
Yeah.
But still, I will never understand that we still have a religion like this having so many followers. Is unbelievable to me. I would understand for people like they have grew up like me in it, and all these Islamic countries they grew up with it. They know nothing else. But what about the amount of people who are like there was Christian, or they read the Quran and they seriously say, oh, okay, this is the God I have to follow. I have to how I can't understand how people can seriously, like, it's not only Islam, the Christianity is almost the same like Islam, a part of difference, but it's the same God. Do what I want or burn eternally. This is not a God I would say he's worthy of worship, I would not even give him a bit respect, because I mean, he created this world as a test. Even if he would exist, even if I would know, even if I would have seen Allah, I would not worship him. Because just look at this world. He created this as a test. The worst thing I have ever heard in my life was, we live in a world where a book exists where you get taught how you can harm a little baby without getting it injured. It teaches you how deep you can insert things in the baby so you don't get catched by the cops. I mean,
wait, that's in the Quran, you mean? I don't think.
No, it's a book for pedophiles who want to do things with kids and they don't want to catch. They get to learn about it.
That's horrible.
It's I don't know. I have read once about it, but in which kind of sick world we live, where you get taught how you can harm little kids and you get away with it? How can people help each other to do such things? And at the same time, you say, "Oh, we have to worship this God because he is a good God." I mean, if I would see someone trying to harm a child, I would do my best to stop this person. But God says, no, I will watch, and after you die, I will judge you for it.
Hmm.
And when I talk about this, the response from religious people is, but it's good for the child, because this child has get the ticket to Jannah.
Yeah, but because there is no afterlife as far as we know, like this compensation, which isn't even like it doesn't cancel out, but that compensation never comes. So they tolerate so much harm in this world because they think there's going to be a compensation. It's sad indeed, but I hope that you can like give yourself some space from all of this, and maybe come back to it when you're feeling a bit better, or when their believers comments don't get to you as much. But everybody needs a break every now and then.
Yeah, that's I completely agree. Sometimes it's really too much, and
Hmm.
sometimes I don't even want to talk about certain things. Um, but I just can't understand such people,
Hmm.
It's it's I think it's not okay. Uh, yeah, I don't know what to say again. Sorry.
That's okay. I
Yeah.
understood you. Well, I know a lot of people in the live chat were empathizing with you, and they feel the same way. So they appreciate you talking about it here. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Like I said, all I can say is stay away from Islam.
Yeah, if you can help it, try to stay away from Islam and any religion similar in that sense. Yeah.
Because not long ago I saw a video how Muslims would act when they would have power, how they would make the non-believers pay zakah, or how you call it, and then they have to live under the Sharia, and they don't have
Well,
no
not all
freedom.
Muslims believe that, but I feel like there's not going to be a huge amount of resistance sometimes to Islamic governments taking over, as we see in Muslim countries. So yeah, it is a hopefully that doesn't happen to Muslims or others, because I think even Muslims are suffering under those circumstances. Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, there are still like 6 countries, I think, where it's still legal to kill people who try to leave Islam.
I think in,
And
in in more than that, even if they don't kill them, they get them on other charges or whatever. It's
mhm,
very common, unfortunately.
yeah, you have to go to prison forever or stuff like that. And when I talk about that on TikTok, people mostly say, yeah, this has nothing to do with Islam. Show me one verse in the Quran where it says you have to kill apostates. And then I say, yeah, it's not in the Quran. They use hadith for it.
Hmm.
And then they say, but the hadith is not authentic. They never want to, I don't know the English word for it. They never want to take responsibility for it. Everything, when something bad happens, they say is not real Islam, is not you have a wrong translation from the Quran, or this Muslim doesn't represent us. And they always show the sugar coated version. And
Hmm.
this should tell you enough about the religion. Because if you just get feed the sugar-coated version, there must be a lot of bad things they don't want you to know about.
Well, I want you to think about, to end on a positive note. Tell me one thing that has improved since you've stopped believing, something in your life.
Um, my understanding for people who believe, even I think, like I said, I'm a very empathic person. I feel much for people. I want only the best for everyone. And um, before I was like too strict. I was not knowing, should I only dislike the religion or the followers also. And now we're getting more known about on TikTok how to talk with other people.
Hmm.
I think my understanding has grown, you know. I
When,
try
when
to
you have a lot of empathy and not a lot of understanding of the other side, it can be very difficult on you. I've
yeah,
felt that. I felt that a lot. But I hope with time that you understand them more. And it's still frustrating, but maybe it gives you some kind of closure in a sense. To an extent.
like I said, I just want the best for everyone. Everyone who's in the chat saying something to me. Sorry, I can't. I'm not able to do multitasking. I can't read, comment, and talk. So
It's okay.
have a good day to everyone in the chat, and thanks for having me. And like I said, please continue. There are many people like me who have doubts, and you're helping us. Okay.
I'll always do my best. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
take care, Sultan.
Yeah. Bye
Have a good
bye.
one. Bye-bye. All right. Thanks again, Sultan, for calling. I have a couple of comments to read, and then I'll show you something, and then I'll say a couple of things. Mo Jake is asking, will Aladdin do a face reveal if he gets 100K subs? Hell no. And Kit Kat is saying to all the ex-Muslims living in the West, you guys have the luck to criticize Islam, or I would call it privilege, and be just fine. Not just fine, but obviously in a better position than someone who's around more, Muslims in a Muslim community or country. So they're saying, please raise awareness to the other billion Muslims in the world, not by insulting them, but by pointing out the wrong in Islam. Yeah, I hope you know that the goal is not to insult the believers. At least that's what I try to keep conveying to people. And I hope that I'm on that track. What did I want to show you? Yeah, so I want to show you, for those who don't know, on my channel, Aladdin Reads, check it out. It's a channel where I'm trying to post more on it, but basically I just post me reading some stories that I got off of Reddit or somewhere else. And it's because some people told me that they want to listen to something as they're, working or falling asleep or something like that. And I don't want them to always be listening to something triggering or sad or something stressful that has to do with religion. So if that's what you're after, I'm going to try reading stories on that channel. So check it out. Give this video a like, by the way. And this is one more thing I want to show you, has been here the whole time. How do I sit here for 3+ hours? Because this guy is often nearby. Say hi, say bye. Someone's saying, can you upload, Vuzi is saying, can you upload your streams as podcasts on Spotify and Apple Music? I haven't looked into it or the costs associated, or even if they would allow me to, given the topics and sometimes people cussing or something. Maybe I'll look into it, but I'm going to try to segment some stories that were shared here and put them as their own videos. I am working on that. What else did I want to tell you? Yeah. Watch my videos. If you go on my channel page, you'll see different playlists that will make it easier to, if you don't just want to watch live streams, there are shorter videos that aren't live stream formats. And I would really appreciate it if you watch those because I spend a lot of time working on them, and sometimes I convey ideas better in them. So check them out. Like, I have a couple of more recent videos. One of them is a short, which sometimes shorts are harder for people to come across for some reason. And yeah, and like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'm going to be adding some subtitles to videos. I'm adding Arabic subtitles to my Prophet Muhammad. What was the last video? I'm going to add subtitles, Arabic subtitles to that, as people have requested. And check out the schedule for live streaming on my my channel's banner. So yeah, thank you for being here, everyone, for watching live or otherwise. Thanks to other callers as well. As always, think critically and think for yourself.